He's charged with the murder of missing student Jimmie J. Lee, whose body's never been found. Investigators say Herrington and Lee had entered into a sexual relationship before Lee's death, and online searches by the defendant for, quote, how to strangle somebody.
Let's go back into the courtroom now. We're listening to the cross-examination of the detective on this case, Mark Hodges.
Officer, again, during the time, and just remove the concept of timestamps from it. During the time period from when the vehicle, the J. Lee vehicle enters Molly Bar Trails to the time that the individual on foot that we've been talking about is seen leaving, do any other vehicles or individuals enter or leave Molly Bar Trails?
I do not recall.
Okay. Well, Judge, I believe the video would speak for itself. It's only about a 9-minute strip. I'd ask you to just play it.
It's your cross-examination. Play what you want. Wake me up when it's over.
And Judge, I've got some, to prove my point, I've got some time stamps. It's okay, I'm gonna skip ahead just a second. Within the frame of what we're discussing. Sergeant Hodges, do you see a white SUV leaving Molly Bar Trails?
Yes, sir.
What direction does that vehicle appear to be traveling?
Towards Rockets.
It made a right out of Molly Bar Trail, driving down Molly Bar Road towards Rockets. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Sergeant Hodges, do you recognize that white car exiting Molly Bar Trails?
Yes, sir, I see it.
Is it likewise traveling consistent, making a right turn out of Molly Bar Trails towards Rockets?
Yes, sir.
Seconds. Do you see this blue car entering Molly Bar Trails?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cross-examination there of the police detective, and the surveillance video really does tell the state's story. They don't have a body, but they have the victim pulling up in his vehicle, and the vehicle never leaves. he's
No explanation.
last seen there. And you add the other components, it's compelling.
Right. I think the state has done a great job of really doing the storytelling here, because all of the witnesses that they put on the stand, especially initially in this case, they shared so much about Jay Lee's life. And that was key here. Usually these witnesses can't get into what they like to do, what they enjoyed, who they talked to, how close they were to their relatives. But they were able to do that in this case because they have to show he would not have disappeared on his own.
Right.
And they were compelling witnesses. So when you hear that he loved his job, his internship, he wanted to be a social worker, he was dedicated to his classes, his family.
The dog.
The dog that he loved, that he wanted to be close to all the time, was still inside his apartment. And then you see his car go up to the defendant's apartment and never leave. That it's strong circumstantial evidence.
Right. For a jury, it's very compelling. And then you add the wheelbarrow and the shovel. I mean, the things that make, who else would have done this? Is he dead? You know, to your point, the dog, it's his mom's birthday. He doesn't call. I mean, they did a very good job of portraying it. Now the defense has done a good job poking holes too.
And trying to say that other people may have been in his life.
Right, yeah. So it's a good one. We'll get a break here. We'll get you back for more right after this.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Thanks so much for following along with us this afternoon. We're in Mississippi, where it's day 3 of testimony in the missing student murder trial. Defendant Timothy Herrington is accused of killing an Ole Miss student, Jay Lee, who was reported missing on July 8th, 2022. His body has never been found. Investigators say that he had been with the defendant that night, and that the defendant searched how long does it take to strangle someone in the hours just before Lee's last known contact with other people. Let's get you into the courtroom now. The state's next witness has taken the stand, Sergeant Ben Douglas with the University of Mississippi's Police Department.
Please state your name to the jury.
My name is Benjamin Douglas.
And how are you employed?
I work for the University of Mississippi Police Department. I'm currently on assignment to Lafayette County Metro Narcotics.
And what's your rank?
I'm a sergeant.
Okay, so Sergeant Douglas, how long have you worked for the University Police Department?
Approximately 6 years.
And you just said that you do, you're on loan to Metro Explain that.
I'm on assignment, so
Okay, what's that
I've
mean?
been assigned to Lafayette County Metro Narcotics. So I have a time frame that I'm not working at UPD every single day. So right now I'm working for Lafayette County Metro every single day. It's a task force for the entirety of Lafayette County for specifically narcotics cases.
So let me take you back to July 2022. Were you working with the University Police Department at that time?
I was the detective sergeant.
And did you become involved in the case investigation into the disappearance of Jay Lee?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me, how did University Police Department become, tell me what you did. How'd you become involved?
So on the night of July 9th, I received a phone call about 8 o'clock from Lieutenant Herrington. She asked me to come to the University of Mississippi Police Department to assist with a welfare concern that was ongoing. Jimmie J. Lee had not been heard from by his parents for an extended period of time, and they called for welfare concern. At the university, we do welfare concerns pretty often. They call if a parent is worried about their kid, they'll call, they'll ask us to go and just check on them. And so we go to Campus Walk, or an officer went to Campus Walk and attempted to make contact with Jimmie J. Lee on the night of July 8th. They were unable to make contact. They found his door ajar. They went in, didn't find anything, didn't find him there, didn't see anything disheveled. So they just secured the door and left. They tried to make contact with him throughout the next day. They tried to make contact with him throughout the next day, but were unable to. And so around 5 o'clock-ish, Lieutenant Herrington was called and asked to come to the police department, and at around 8 o'clock, she called me.
Okay, so once you became involved, what did you do?
When I got there at 8 o'clock, I went
Just to be clear, what date was this again?
July 9th.
Okay, so when you became involved on July 9th around 8, continue on.
So, on July 9th, whenever I got there around 8 o'clock, I was informed that they had done a single ping on Jaylee's phone, but that they hadn't done any further pings, any further trying to get location data off the phone.
Before you go any further, explain, when you say...
We object to this as far as the ping information at this time unless predicates being laid forward.
I'll sustain objection.
Could you explain what a ping is? Is that what you're referring to? You just said you did a single ping. Could you explain like what that is?
So your phone connects to cell towers. And those cell towers give location data associated with when your phone connects to them. And then it gives a basically a margin of error as to where it could be, where the phone could be.
We talked about this pre-trial as to whether or not any particular witness.
At this point, I'm going to limit the testimony until we have further discussion about whether they recorded any pings or not. Okay, and then we'll probably have some more discussion, but I'm going to let them talk about whether any pings were received or not.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I couldn't hear Your Honor very well. What was the...
I'm going to let him talk about whether any pings were received at this time, and we'll have a further discussion before we get any deeper than that, okay? Okay.
So you're explaining that it connects to cell towers and within a margin of error. I'm not sure I know, what does margin of error mean?
It's basically like, we're going to tell you this, we're going to give you this latitude and longitude on a piece of paper.
I'm just going to limit his testimony at this time to whether or not any pings were received on this phone.
Okay. When you are going to get a ping, what information do you provide?
When I'm going to go get a ping, I give the phone number. So I call AT&T Global Legal Demand Center. When I call them, they ask, I tell them that it's an exigent circumstance. I explain the circumstance to them, and I provide them a phone number, and they will send back a ping on the phone.
So tell me, what phone number did you provide?
I provided Jaylee's phone number, which is 601-622-2553.
And how did you know Jaylee's phone number?
We have regular access to student phone numbers through the Student Access Portal, the SAP system.
The SAP system?
So
that's the Student Access Portal.
So whenever students enroll at the University of Mississippi, they give data to the university. Part of that data is of cell phone addresses, things like that. The university keeps those records so that they're able to contact their students.
Okay. And did you all receive any ping data?
Whenever I called initially, I did not receive a ping. They sent me an email that said that the phone was an AT&T phone and was there, but there was no location data associated with the ping. While I was talking with the AT&T, the person at the Global Legal Demand Center, he told me that it seemed that the phone had been inactive for too long, and so there was no location data associated with it. So I asked him if there was any way for us to get historic pings through exigent circumstance. And so he provided me with historic pings on Jaylee's phone from 12:17 a.m. on July 8th to 7:28 a.m. on July 8th.
Before you go any further, when you say exigent circumstances, explain what that means for anybody who might not understand.
So an exigent circumstance is just an emergency. Him being missing, it could be any number of things that have happened to him. And so because there's an emergency circumstance, we need to be able to get in contact with him because someone else is concerned or has a reason for concern. We do not have to get a search warrant in that moment. We are able to get it through exigency.
And so here you did receive pings, you said, from July 8th from 12:17 a.m. until 7:28 a.m. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Okay.
This is
All right, while the attorney there goes over what's happening, some of that documentation that she's looking through there in the courtroom, let's bring in our civil rights and trial attorney who's standing by, Dante Pointer. Dante, we're getting to see behind the scenes of what happens when there is a welfare check, a missing person reported. Your thoughts on this case, but also how perhaps him being a college student may have added to the exigency we're hearing from this university police officer.
Well, you know, this case is heartbreaking. You know, we're talking about a young person who, one, lost their life, and another person who's now charged with responsibility for killing that person. And what you're hearing and seeing is, you know, every parent's nightmare when they send their child off to college, which is you're trusting them that they're in a safe environment. You can't find them, they go missing, and this is the dreadful conclusion no one ever wants to hear about. What you're also seeing here too with this officer's testimony is what we all know, even if we don't term, our phones are like an electronic leash, okay? And they track information, and they're a treasure trove of information, and if you will, evidentiary crumbs that a police can use in order to lead them to the suspect, as well as to help solve crimes. And that's what this officer is talking about now, how they used the phones in order to put the victim and the suspect together and to recreate a timeline of an event. And we also know from the opening statements that that phone had other additional information, which gives the police insight into the mind state of the defendant and what he was thinking of after or around the time the young person lost their life.
Those digital evidentiary crumbs, that's what we are getting piece by piece in this case. Dante, stand by. Let's go back in. That pause in the action inside of the courtroom has stopped.
Sergeant Douglas, look through that and tell me, do you recognize that as the exigent circumstances ping data that you received? I believe you said July 9th, 2022?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And yes, ma'am, this is it.
Okay. And has it been altered in any way since you received it on July 9th?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And it accurately represents what you received?
Yes, ma'am.
Your note this time, I'd like to have it marked for identification purposes only.
All right, it's going to be S22.
It's 2.
It'll be marked for ID. Only at this time.
Yes. All right. Thank you. So you have a copy up here. Okay. So from those pings that you received, were you able to develop any leads in that data?
The final 2 pings that we received were at 7:28:27 a.m.
Responsive to the question, objective.
I'm not sure I understood the question anyway, so I'm going to let her repeat the question. And then,
I said, were you able to develop any leads from that data that you received?
answer yes or no, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And were you, from those leads, you said it's to find the phone's location. Were you able to develop where the phone could have possibly been between those hours to, for Jay Lee?
We were able to get multiple pings over the course of this time between 12:17 a.m. and 7:28 a.m. Some of those pings.
What between when and when?
12:17 a.m. and 7:28 a.m. on July 8th.
12:17.
12:17 a.m. to 7:28 a.m.
Okay.
Okay.
I figured it's going to be important later, so I won't get it right this time anyway.
And was there anything from what you know about the investigation on July 9th, was there anything you said, when did the phone, you said they told you the phone was no longer transmitting. When did it stop transmitting?
The final ping was 7:28:27 a.m. on July 8th.
Okay. So would it be important for you to find out where it was when it stopped?
Yes,
Okay. And why would that be important?
because people always have their phone on them. They travel with their phone in their pocket. We also, later on in the investigation, we determined that he had his phone whenever he left his apartment.
Okay. So when you receive this data, what is it that you receive? Like, what actually is it?
It's a series of latitudes and longitudes that also have a timestamp and a margin of error, an area that they mark it as location accuracy, how accurate the location may be.
All right, I'm going to ask the jury to start walking off Little Lunch and go back to the jury room, okay?
Sending the jury out of the courtroom as we are learning more about Jay Lee's phone. Don't go anywhere. We'll have more from the missing student murder trial for Timothy Herrington after this quick break. Stay tuned.
Coming soon to Court TV.
It's the biggest story that we're covering.
He is the boogeyman.
Lori Daybell.
She said, I will have you destroyed.
She's got another murder trial coming up.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
We will not stop fighting. We have no quit.
Sean Diddy Combs arrested on a federal indictment.
The high-stakes trials you don't want to miss. Coming soon. Only on Court TV.
Although to that Mississippi courtroom for the missing student murder trial, defendant Timothy Herrington is accused of killing Ole Miss student Jay Lee. He was reported missing on July 8th, 2022. His body has never been located, and investigators say that Herrington and Lee had been together that night and that Herrington searched on his computer how long does it take to strangle someone in the hours before Lee's last known contact. Let's get you back into court where the attorneys are arguing now outside the presence of the jury, and on the stand is a university police officer.
Two things. First of all, before any testimony that come into play as far as the not necessarily latitude and longitude, but the range of location of the within certain areas of the ping where it would be location-wise, that has to be done by an expert, first of all. That's what we talked about in written. I think the court indicated at that time that before they got any further than latitude and longitude, they would have to have an expert to testify to that, or indicated at that point when we were in written. Second thing is, under the Fleming case, and you follow Smith behind it, at the point in time, right now, he can only testify to what he received, and the documents are to be interpreted, and he can say, I received this information, and the purpose of that was to determine whether or not lat and long on it, and he can plot that, and that's basically it, Your Honor. Not testify about anything other than that. Fleming and Smith.
I'm familiar with Fleming. Are you saying that under Fleming, the witness, your opinion of Fleming, that witness can testify as to latitude and longitude?
If he's qualified to do so, Your Honor, he can testify and plot out those points as to lat and long. He cannot go any further than that as to whether or not it's within any particular range, footage, or anything like that from a person, from a location, or anything like that, or a tower. It cannot, with any specificity, say where that phone is. This witness is not qualified to do that.
All right. Respond.
Y'all, you through, Mr. Tolan? I won't cut you off. And I may want to reread Fleming.
Second thing, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
It hasn't been addressed or marked as an exhibit yet, but I understand. I think we need to go ahead and address it while the jury is out, that I think the state is anticipating trying to get a certificate of authenticity on these records that was submitted to us. last night, I think 4:45 by email. That certificate of authenticity, had it been produced earlier, would only allow a witness qualified to do so to testify about some of the lat-long information and how it relates to particular locations and the range that he was attempting to talk about before we cut him off, Your Honor. That's an untimely 902 11C2 certificate. We got it yesterday, and we would object to any admissibility of any documents for the purpose of either that record of authenticity certificate or any other AT&T documents coming into evidence that would represent to the jury any particular information about within whether location of persons, locations of cell towers, or locations of whether or not what the margin of error was for the location of the particular ping location, if that makes sense to you, Judge.
I'm familiar with your argument, and I'm going to listen to the state, and then I'm probably going to take a minute and look at Fleming's again, okay?
Yes. Your Honor, I didn't actually anticipate.
Let me ask before you get into your argument, so we know what we're arguing about. What testimony did you anticipate eliciting from this particular witness?
Just latitude and longitude. I actually wasn't, when we spoke about it, we didn't talk about margin of error. I actually am not attempting to ever introduce it into evidence. It's just marked for ID because it's just being used to show how he developed investigative leads. It's all leading somewhere.
Are you going to limit this witness testimony to latitude and longitudes pings during this 7-hour or so time frame?
Yes, Your Honor, but I would also, that is what I'm going to do. And I would point the court to the Collins case, which I don't know if...
Let me, before you start that, as I understand that the defense does not have any objections to latitude and longitude information if it stops there with this witness?
That's basically, as long as he's already testified, Your Honor, that this identifies where a person is. They cannot say that clearly under Fleming. They cannot testify that the person's with the phone.
I'll be limited to whatever it is where the phone, latitude and longitude of a phone.
Of a phone. That's clearly what Fleming says. And Your Honor, I guess I'm not...
Can I respond?
Hold on one second. Mr. Douglas was provided in the 1121 discovery disclosure. I will say none of his testimony or summary of any of these statements were provided to us that he would be giving this type of testimony. Based on the discovery violation, we would object to that as well. I understand that I'm making the same discovery responses. His name was provided in discovery, but his testimony that he was going to provide Latin long information at trial is nowhere in any of the discovery material. Okay?
Right.
I want to be clear on that.
I understand. I'm going to...
Notwithstanding that objection, if the court overrules that, the law is clear that he can testify he received the phone records and the phone records have Latin law.
Did the defense receive this latitude and longitude information in discovery?
We received, again, Your Honor, you got to understand, we received that information. There's no association to Ben Douglas anywhere in it, other than the fact that he received it. Not that he was going to, as far as the Latin law.
The defense received the information that in discovery that Ben Douglas received latitude and longitude information
in April of 23 on that particular information.
Okay. I'm going to overrule your discovery violation objection, and now if the state is attempting to only introduce latitude and longitude information through this particular witness, is there an objection to that?
No.
All right. Is that what you're? If you're going farther, I need to know it. But
I want to clarify. When you say latitude and longitude information, you mean he's going to say where that latitude and longitude points to? Is that what you're saying? Like,
Somebody let me look at Fleming's and see if.
I have the Collins case, which I wanted to provide to the court.
I'd like to hear that.
Thank you.
It doesn't. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to coordinate latitude and longitude if they have that to a spot on Earth anyway. But go ahead.
That's all he was going to do, coordinate latitude and longitude. And we were going to introduce it. We're not introducing it, just ID only to show how he went along with the investigation. That's all he was going to do. And then he was going to coordinate it and say, this was here, this was here. We weren't talking about
Let's just say that latitude and longitude is latitude is X and longitude is Y. Do you anticipate saying latitude is X and longitude is Y?
I'm with Judge Luther here. You don't necessarily need a rocket scientist to come in and talk about longitude and latitude, but it depends on how far this witness on the stand, this detective, is going to be going with his testimony. We'll see. They're going to figure that out, and we will bring you the latest. Welcome back. Let's go back to Mississippi for more testimony in the missing student murder trial. The defendant there, Sheldon Timothy Herrington, is charged with capital murder in the death of Jimmie J. Lee. Lee was a University of Mississippi student studying to be a social worker. He was last seen alive in Oxford back in 2022. And we have on the stand now Sergeant Ben Douglas with the University Police Department. Before the jury had been sent out so they could argue over whether this witness could talk about longitude and latitude, the judge has agreed that he can talk about that and the places that relate to those coordinates. Let's go back into court. The jury is back in.
I believe where we left off, Sergeant Douglas, is when was the J. Lee's phone stopped transmitting, or you could no longer receive pings?
Yes, ma'am.
When was that?
That was at 7:28 a.m. on July 8th.
And you received latitude and longitude information in the from the phone from AT&T, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, for the last location of the ping, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what were the last two locations, the ping locations?
The last two locations, the 7:28 a.m. ping, the 7:28:27 a.m. ping was near Stone Park, and the 7:28.
We talked about that. Johnny can give latitude and longitude only.
Said he could say it.
I'm going to let him. I think he can testify as to where that latitude and longitude intersect on the Earth.
As to the ping on.
I don't know exactly what.
Same ping.
I think he was saying ping. You limit your testimony to where the ping came from, okay?
Yes, sir.
I think that's what you did, but go ahead.
Yes, so the ping, the direct ping, the last two pings, the 7:28:27 a.m. ping on July 8th is near Stone Park, which is across from the Oxford Police Department. And the 7:28:26 a.m. ping is near Residential College South, which is at the intersection of Gertrude Ford and Jackson Avenue. So in relation to...
Well, I'll ask, how far is Molly Bar Trails from Stone Park?
Approximately half a mile.
And how far is Molly Bar Trails from Residential College South?
Approximately 1.5 miles.
Now, you said you were doing this because, J. Lee was missing, it was an emergency, and we're hoping to find him, as people usually keep their cell phones. What did you all do? The phone was off. Or wait, before I get into that, you said they told you it stopped transmitting. Did that mean it was off? What did that mean?
It could be off, it could be broken. It's just not transmitting to cell towers anymore. So
Okay.
the cell towers are not receiving anything.
Okay, so it was just not there anymore. Okay, so how did your investigation proceed forward beyond the pings?
So after the pings, We continued looking for, the University Police Department continued to look for Jay Lee, look for his vehicle, look for things that we knew were associated with him. Then on July 10th, Lieutenant Carradine conducted an interview with Jose Reyes. I sat in on that interview. After that interview, I wrote a search warrant for Jay Lee's apartment.
Okay. Did you actually go to the search warrant while it was being executed?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And I believe we've already sort of heard testimony regarding that. So following the search warrant on July 10th, had Jay Lee been found?
No, he had not.
So what were the next steps for you in your investigation?
Next steps were I filed an exigency request with both Apple and Google. So I filed an exigency request with Apple for information associated with Jay Lee's Apple iCloud. We didn't have his phone at this point, but Apple iCloud is integral to iPhones, and we knew that Jay Lee had an iPhone. We also knew Jay Lee's Gmail account, and so we sent an exigency to see if that Gmail account was associated with his iCloud account.
So tell me, what was your purpose for sending these two exigency requests? Like, why did you do that in the investigation?
We wanted to see if they had location data that they would send us just immediately, because we were trying to find him. We also wanted to see if anybody had called him, if anybody had texted him. We were trying to just get generalized information that would help us find.
We're getting to see the inner workings of a missing persons report. What can happen? We'll get you back in for more testimony after this break.
We are in Mississippi this afternoon for day 3 of the missing student murder trial. 20-year-old Jimmie J. Lee was reported missing back in July of 2022 after he failed to call his mom on her birthday, a tradition that she says he never missed. 2 weeks after Lee's disappearance, defendant Sheldon Timothy Herrington was arrested for Lee's murder. Prosecutors say Lee and Herrington had sexual contact in the hours before Lee's disappearance, and that Herrington searched online for quote-unquote how long it takes to strangle someone. The defense says, though, there is not any direct evidence connecting Herrington to the crime. Let's get you back into court now, where Sergeant Ben Douglas is on direct examination by the state.
Find Jay, find where he was at, if we could.
And at this point in the investigation, did you have any information that you believe would make that relevant?
Can you repeat that question?
At this point in the investigation, did you have any information from witnesses or footage that would make that relevant, or anything?
Yes. Other officers had spoken with Khalid Fears. Khalid had told them that he was on the phone with Jay Lee the night that he went missing, that he was about to go to a hookup with someone that he had previously blocked.
And did you have an opportunity to view any footage that might have corroborated that?
Yes, I saw campus walk video footage of Jay Lee leaving his apartment. He leaves the apartment on his phone, and the door doesn't close all the way behind him. That's just the same way that officers found it whenever they arrived.
And did you later get a search warrant? Oh, well, let me approach. May I approach, Your Honor? If I approach, I should show you that.
She's asked to approach.
Okay.
That's just marked right. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Sergeant Douglas, do you recognize what I'm handing you?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that?
This is the Apple iCloud exigency form.
Okay, and is that what you received when you requested this back? I believe you said July 10th?
This is what I sent to
this is
Apple
what you sent. Okay.
to receive information back.
Okay. And has it been changed in any way?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time I'd like to have the Apple exigency marked for ID.
All right. Well, for ID purposes, fine. S23. Is that just, is that the warrant or the return?
This is just the, what he requested, his request. Sergeant Douglas, did you at all follow up on, I believe you said something to Apple and to Google. Did you follow up on that?
Yes, we received the exigencies, but we eventually wrote search warrants for the information associated with Jay Lee's Apple iCloud account and his Gmail account.
Okay. And when you received, did you receive information back from either of those?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may. And you don't have to ask every time. I don't think y'all gonna fight or anything.
Jack. Accidentally dropped it. This was Apple search warrant. This was the Apple agency request.
Everybody good over there?
Apple search warrant on Jay Lee's, for Jay Lee's iCloud, I believe. Yeah. This is the Apple for his.
When you see the witness like that, it just means the attorney's asking to approach is showing documents, doing things that have to be done in the course of a trial, but it's a pause in the testimony. We're going to stay on it, though, so we can see everything that happens.
Sergeant Douglas, do you recognize what I've just handed you?
Yes, ma'am. This is the search warrant for Jay Lee's Apple ID information.
Okay.
Or iCloud information, excuse me.
Is it the return?
No, this is the physical search warrant for the Apple iCloud.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm just going to do return. And is that in a substantially similar condition as when you submitted it?
Yes, it is.
And has it been changed in any way?
No, ma'am, it is not.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to have it marked for identification.
Being the Apple iCloud return.
Search warrant.
The warrant itself. Or the return.
Just the IDs.
This S24 that's next, is that the iCloud return or the iCloud warrant?
Warrant.
Okay.
And you received information back from the Apple return and from the search warrant, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Tell me what relevant information did you receive?
We found a phone number inside of the return that returned to Tim Herrington.
Let me show you this.
You know, part of this is, as a trial attorney, you have to be very, very well organized and prepared when you are questioning a witness, because you don't want the jury sitting there while you are having to take time organizing documents, figuring out how to get them introduced, figuring out who to hand to. All of this should be seamless, but in this particular case, it's just taking a moment for each of these exhibits. Right now, they're talking about Apple data information, and the sergeant just testified that they found a phone number that returned to the defendant in the case, Timothy Herrington.
Okay. Sometimes this work is tedious, I'll say that anyway.
Sergeant Douglas,
He didn't introduce that. I couldn't read it. He read it.
Sergeant Douglas, do you recognize what I handed you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what are the two things I handed you?
You handed me Apple message logs from the search warrant and a note that I found when going through the iCloud note data.
Okay, does that accurately reflect two of the items that you received back to the Apple search warrant?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
And it hasn't been altered in any way?
No, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move to enter those two items, the message logs he just referred to and the note from J. Lee's iCloud account, into evidence.
Message log, and the other thing was?
A note, like a note, and I'll let you explain what the note is.
So the note has, when going through J. Lee's iCloud account, there's a lot of information, a lot of data. One of the things that iCloud stores is your notes. So whenever you take a note on your phone in the Notes app, it's stored in Apple iCloud. Whenever we were going through those notes, we found a note, just like many people do, where he started writing down passwords associated with certain things. One of those things was Snapchat. We found a note that specifically said Snapchat and then had passwords written out next to it. And so we, when we found that, we downloaded the note, printed it off so that we would be able to access his Snapchat at some point.
Okay, at this time I would have it, the note and the message log moved into evidence.
Is that a composite S25, both are two different items?
I would do a composite, Your Honor.
Any objection?
Not without waiving my previous objections, but as far as this point, I'm no objection.
No, all right. Is that S25 two documents? That is 25. Yeah. All right. All right, we'll be admitted.
We need to squeeze in a break. Of course, we will have more testimony from the missing student murder trial for Timothy Herrington. Stay tuned.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a jury convicted Melody Farris for the murder of her husband. Now she's facing sentencing. We're breaking down everything you may have missed from today's emotional hearing.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
It's the biggest story that we're covering.
He is the boogeyman.
Lori Daybell.
She said, I will have you destroyed.
She got another murder trial coming up.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
Call now.
And back now to the missing student murder trial out of Mississippi. Defendant Timothy Herrington is accused of killing Ole Miss student J. Lee after the two had met up on a July evening back in 2022. Lee's mom began to worry about her son when he had not called to wish her a happy birthday, a tradition she says he never missed. 2 weeks later, Herrington was arrested for Lee's murder, although his body has never been found. Let's get you back into court now, where Sergeant Ben Douglas is on the stand on direct examination.
So, Sergeant Douglas, you just testified about a phone number that was related to Tim Herrington that you received.
We'll stipulate to the phone number to be blurted out in the courtroom.
You'll still be accurate. He still has the same number, I think. Still has the same number? Okay. So, without saying what Tim Herrington's actual phone number is, I would like you to look at, is it showing on your screen?
Nobody's, I don't think. In all likelihood, if it'll probably be shown to the world anyway. Don't show these phone numbers on your media at this time, okay?
Sergeant Douglas, are you able to see that?
Yes, ma'am.
And remind us again, this was from Jay Lee's Apple search warrant, like the phone.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you highlighted 2 times. What are those times?
In Central Time, they're going to be 2:54 a.m. in Central Standard.
You said in Central Time. When you received this, what time was it in?
I believe PDT is Pacific.
And our time zone is Central.
Central, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this time would indicate what time again?
2:54 a.m.
Okay, and at 2:54 a.m., you said the phone number, which they have stipulated is Tim Herrington's phone number. What were you able to determine happened from Jay Lee's account regarding Tim Herrington's phone number?
It received some form of message from that phone number.
Could you tell what kind?
No, ma'am. There wasn't any data associated with the message. It was just, it returned an iMessage return, so we assume it's an iMessage.
And the next thing you received, and I won't show this either, is the passwords account to Jay Lee's accounts of different social medias.
Yes, ma'am.
And why was that important?
At this time, we had not received a return from Snapchat, but we also knew that Jay Lee used Snapchat quite often because we had talked to Khalid Fears, and he spoke about how he would talk to Jay Lee on Snapchat. We wanted to know who all he was communicating with on Snapchat. We also wanted to see if there was any sort of data that could help us find him, see if there was some sort of message on Snapchat that showed where he had gone or where he was going or what he had done. We were trying to, whenever we found that password, what we were able to do is we were able to log into Jay Lee's Snapchat as though we were Jay Lee himself.
So you actually use that password to log into Jay Lee's Snapchat account?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and did you discover anything?
So in Snapchat, you're able to go into your settings as a user and you're able to download your own data. And so we went into it and we downloaded the data of Jay Lee's Snapchat account as though we were the user or the owner of the account. Whenever we downloaded that data, we were able to look at received messages. We weren't able to see the messages that Jay Lee had sent, but we were able to see the messages that Jay Lee had received. In those messages, we found texts in the time frame that Jay Lee had left his apartment that sounded as though he was going to meet somebody that he had already met. Messages like "come back."
And you said, were you able to see what user was sending those?
Yes, the username was redeye_24.
And you said around the time he was leaving. What time was that? I'm sorry, around the time Jay Lee was leaving?
Around the time that Jay Lee was leaving.
Yeah, what time was that?
Would have been around 5 a.m.-ish.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. I actually couldn't hear you, but you can review your notes if you need to.
All right, let's bring in trial attorney Tad Thomas and criminal defense attorney Brian Watkins. Tad, Brian, thank you, of course, for being on with us today. Talk about following the breadcrumbs. This sergeant is really walking us through everything they did, from the surveillance video when it shows the victim last leaving his apartment, to what the friend told him about Lee was on his way to hook up, to then looking at the Apple data, to look at Snapchat, to get the password. Brian, really a bang-up job, I think, by law enforcement following the evidence to figure out what happened.
Absolutely, and what that really shows is the thoroughness of their investigation. And when the prosecution presents a very thorough investigation like that, it gives them credibility. So everything they say, the jury believes, because everything that the prosecution is saying is based on something, based on some sort of investigative finding. And like I said, that gives a lot of credibility to everything the prosecution says. And at the end, closing argument comes and they say that he's guilty, the jury's likely to believe that.
And talk, if you would, Tad, about the fact that this is really not a case where the prosecution is presenting evidence to say this man did it, here's the proof, whether he's on a video or there's blood on his clothes. We don't have that. Instead, they're basically saying, we've put it all together for you to say there's no other reasonable explanation. This man sitting at the defense table had to have been the one to kill the defendant, the victim rather, but the victim's body has not even been found.
Sure, the entire case is based on circumstantial evidence, so you have to have an overwhelming amount of circumstantial evidence to essentially box the defense in from any other possible arguments. The defense is just going to go through and try to poke holes and look at all the other possibilities. The fact that they don't have a body here, or any digital or any forensic evidence in the apartment or anything like that, it makes a real uphill battle for the prosecution. But I agree with Brian. I think the prosecution is doing a great job with the evidence they have.
Yeah, and Brian, if you were the defense attorney in this case, what else might you be doing as you're listening to the state put forward its case?
One of the problems that the state has is that there's no body. And when you have no body, you have no cause of death. They have him Googling how to strangle someone. We have no cause of death. We don't know that this person was strangled. The truth is, there's no direct evidence that the person is dead. Yes, we can assume that, and the state can make that assumption, but those key pieces of missing evidence are huge, and as a defense attorney, you want to really focus on that and really blow that up.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And a court did declare the victim dead at the request of the parents, but you're right, they don't have any proof of that, they being the state. Gentlemen, stay with us. We need to take a break. When we come back, of course, we're going to get you back inside the Mississippi courtroom for more of the trial.
I would like for everyone to understand who my son is and know that he's a hard worker. My son, was currently working on an effort to provide infant formula for children that did not have it available to, them. I can remember my son coming to this college, being willing to face the unknown without a problem. I'm so proud of him for that.
And back now to Mississippi for more testimony in the missing student murder trial. The defendant, Sheldon Timothy Herrington, is charged with capital murder in the death of Jimmie J. Lee, a University of Mississippi student who was last seen alive in Oxford back in 2022. We just saw his father speaking about the good that he had done as a young man. Still on the stand right now is Sergeant Ben Douglas with the University Police Department, testifying about the evidence they followed, what they learned. Let's get you right back into court.
Sergeant Douglas, are you able to see State's Exhibit 5?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And have you previously viewed this?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it accurate this represents the last time Jay Lee was seen leaving his campus walk apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
And what time was that around?
5:58 a.m.
And you were saying that you from the logging into the Snapchat, you were able to see that messages from a Red Eye, username Red Eye, and what did it appear was happening around this time when he was walking out?
They were saying, come over.
Okay. And why was that important to you, that you saw around the time he was leaving, he was getting messages from a Red Eye saying, come over?
Well, Khalid Fears had previously testified that, or had previously told us that he was going to meet up with someone for a hookup. So someone that he had blocked. So we assumed that whoever he was going over to, who said come over, could potentially be the same person that Khalid was talking about.
And was there any other information in the Snapchat account that you thought was relevant or led to a lead?
Yes, there was location information inside of the Snapchat account.
Other than the location information, we won't be getting into that, regarding accounts that may have been blocked or anything of that nature?
Yes, ma'am. Under blocked accounts, there was an account with the username Tim Herrington.
And why was this significant?
Because Khalid had said that he was going to someone who he had previously blocked.
Okay. So, at this time, what did you all do, or what did you do?
At this time, whenever we finished reading the messages, we got a subpoena to Snapchat to get the user information associated, or the subscriber information associated with the Red Eye _24 account.
And were you, when you sent that subpoena, did you receive any information back?
Yes, the subscriber information revealed a phone number. That phone number was a Google Voice number. It returned to bandwidth.com was the individuals that owned the domain for the phone number. That phone number was a Google Voice number, so we sent an exigency request to Google to get subscriber information associated with that Google Voice number.
So before you go on, I want to make sure that we're all understanding. This was a phone number that was associated with a website, and that website was connected to Google?
So Google has a thing called Google Voice, where you can have a Google phone number, and so it was a Google Voice number.
Oh, so would it be accurate to say that the phone number is connected to a website, but it was like whoever owned the website, or that was their Google Voice number?
You could rent out or like subscribe and have that phone number given to you via Google, just like you would do with any other mobile carrier.
And when you did that, I believe you said it went to a Google Voice number. Were you able to determine anything that was connected to, like the Google Voice number?
Yes, we got a Gmail account that was dirt2, the number 2, dirt2diamondspodcast@gmail.com. Whenever we Googled Dirt to Diamonds podcast, we found a video of Sheldon Timothy Herrington interviewing somebody.
Your Honor, may I approach? I apologize. I'm not going to ask him.
Okay. You can always approach him, guys over there anyway.
Sergeant Douglas, do you recognize what I'm handing you?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that the part of the return that you received when you sent the search warrant to Snapchat for the subscriber information of Red Eye 24?
This is from the subpoena.
Oh, so the subpoena, I apologize. The subpoena for the subscriber information for Red Eye 24.
Yes, ma'am.
And you sort of have already gone through it. That was connected to ultimately Dirt to Diamonds, and you Googled that, and it was a podcast, right?
That same Google Voice number had a recovery phone number that was also Timothy Herrington's.
Oh, so could you say that it had a
recovery phone number? So a phone number, if you lose your password, it sends a code to your phone so you can get a new one. It had a recovery phone number associated with, that was Timothy Herrington's phone number.
So it was the same Timothy Herrington's phone number that we previously stipulated regarding?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So, and at this time, Your Honor, I would move into evidence the subscriber information from the Red Eye 24 account.
Which one is, which exhibit is that?
I think it's S26.
Oh, it'll be the next one.
S26.
S26? And that, what we call them? Have it been identified?
He identified it as what he received.
He identified it to get a number assigned to it? I didn't think so.
I'll identify it.
Let's pass it down to be marked as S26, and then I'll hear for you any objections.
I have no further objection as far as 90211 stuff that we talked about before, but I just want to make sure that Detective Douglas looks through all those documents, make sure we don't have any biographical information that may be.
All right, y'all look through that and make sure we don't have any of that, but
Before we head to break, new developments out of Arizona, where a judge has ruled that Lori Vallow Daybell is mentally competent to stand trial. A Rule 11 hearing was held for Vallow earlier today, where the judge ruled that the trial can continue after 2 doctors deemed Vallow competent to stand trial. Vallow is facing charges in connection to the murder of her 4th husband, Charles Vallow, and the attempted murder of her niece's ex-husband, Brandon Boudreaux. Now, for my thoughts on the bench on this. This is a huge finding in this case. It means that based on 2 specific mental health evaluations done in order to determine if Lori Vallow had the mental capacity, it has been determined that she does have the mental capacity to stand trial, that she can understand the criminal proceedings and can work with a lawyer to assist in her own defense. So that is why this trial can now move forward. Now, this is a very different question than can Lori Vallow be allowed to represent herself or act pro se. Given she is mentally competent and can assist in her own defense, of course, she would likewise be mentally competent to represent herself. But the issue for the court becomes whether or not it's a good idea to allow Vallow to represent herself. Defendants who are not lawyers do not know and or necessarily understand the nuances, evidentiary rules, and legal strategies that are required to defend criminal charges, especially major felony charges, including the 2 counts of conspiracy to commit murder. A pro se defendant, rather, excuse me, generally causes more appellate issues in the event there's a conviction. It can also slow down a trial and inadvertently waste a jury's time and patience. Now, a judge can always decide to allow a defendant to represent themselves with an attorney standing by in court to assist. This is called standby counsel or advisory counsel. They then have limited responsibilities, including answering legal questions, meeting with opposing counsel, and ensuring court procedure is followed. Further, part of the job of standby counsel can be to be ready to take over the defense in the case if the defendant withdraws the request to proceed pro se, or if the court terminates the defendant's right to proceed pro se. Bottom line, if Lori Vallow continues to assert her desire to represent herself, the court must decide to deny, allow, or take a middle ground of sorts and appoint her standby counsel. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Coming soon to Court TV.
It's the biggest story that we're covering.
He is the boogeyman.
Lori Daybell.
She said, I will have you destroyed.
She's got another murder trial coming up.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
We will not stop fighting. We have no quit.
Sean Diddy Combs arrested on a federal indictment.
The high-stakes trials you don't want to miss. Coming soon. Only on Court TV.
We are watching the murder trial for Timothy Herrington in Mississippi this afternoon. Herrington is accused of murdering college student Jimmie J. Lee, who went missing back in July of 2022. Prosecutors believe that Herrington murdered Lee to conceal a romantic relationship between the two. Still on the stand is Sergeant Douglas testifying about information obtained from Lee's social accounts. Direct examination continuing. Let's go back in to hear more.
So at this time, so you received that return, and kind of give us an overview of what happened. This was the Red Eye account when you logged into Jay's Snapchat that was actually chatting back and forth with him.
Yes, ma'am. This was redeye_24, the account that he was using to speak to Jay Lee that night.
Okay, and at this time, when Jay was leaving, one of the messages that you could see from Red Eye appeared to be inviting him over.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that coincided when Jay was leaving his apartment at 558.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so at this point in the investigation, what day did that happen?
That was July 20th.
Okay, did anything
We logged into his Snapchat on July 20th. We got the subpoena on July 21st.
Okay. So anything else of relevance happened on July 21st?
On July 21st, and we also received video footage from Rockets of a white Kia picking up the individual that had run down from Molly Bar Trails.
And who was driving that white Kia? Did your investigation reveal that?
The investigation did reveal that. So on July 22nd, the PD had been looking just all day for that white Kia, seeing if they could find it. UPD found it at Campus Walk on the morning of the 22nd. A traffic stop was initiated on that vehicle, and Keziah Carter was identified as the driver.
So did Keziah Carter identify who he picked up on July 8th?
Yes, during the interview, he identified Tim Herrington as the individual that he had picked up on July 8th.
So at this point in the investigation, what did you all do? What did you all do?
So because we had Keziah picking up Tim running down from Molly Bar Trails, because we had the Red Eye 24 messages saying, come over, because we were able to ID Red Eye 24 as Tim Herrington, we decided that it was best to go and speak to Tim Herrington.
And you said it's the 21st or 22nd? What day is it? In July?
This was the 22nd.
Okay.
Whenever we speak with him.
You said that the footage of Tim Herrington running from Molly Bar Trails, that Keziah picked him up. Why was Molly Bar Trails important?
Because Molly Bar Trails is where Jay Lee's car had been found.
And were you aware of anything about when Jay Lee's car entered Molly Bar Trails?
I had watched the video at some point, but I'm not aware of the exact time frames of each one of them.
But you know that it was the video Keziah picked him up coming from there?
Yes.
Okay, so you said you all decided at that point to that you needed to speak with him. Was this all in accordance also with information you had heard from Khalid Fears in the investigation?
It was. It all stemmed back to Khalid Fears had spoken about someone that he had blocked, that Jay Lee had blocked, someone that he was going to meet for a hookup, and the messages have come over. So we believe, so it just added to believing that we needed to go speak with Tim Herrington.
And I believe earlier you stated when you reviewed Jay Lee's block list, when y'all accessed his account, Tim Herrington, the name that was under the blocked.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you actually participate in that interview of Tim Herrington?
I did not.
So where were you that day and what was going on?
That day, I was at OPD still reviewing data and getting the search warrants for the redeye_24 Snapchat account.
So tell me more now about that. You said you wrote a search warrant for the redeye_24 Snapchat account.
So I wrote a warrant for the redeye_24 search Snapchat account.
Okay. And why did you do that?
We wanted to get any information that was associated with that Snapchat account.
The first thing you did was you sent a subpoena for Red Eye for subscriber information.
To be honest, I'd just like him to answer. I hadn't objected a lot of them leading. I know this is technical stuff, but
I haven't asked the question. I haven't asked the question yet.
Don't we lead your witness, and try to be cognizant of it, okay?
So at this time, you previously talked about getting a subpoena for the subscriber information of redeye_24. Why did you get a warrant also for the Snapchat and full information of redeye_24? Why'd you do that?
Well, all we got was subscriber information. We didn't get messages or other data that was associated with the account. And we wanted as much information from that account as we could possibly get.
Okay. And, Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Oh, I apologize.
Let's bring in our experts this hour, trial attorney Tad Thomas and criminal defense attorney Brian Watkins. Tad, let me start with you because we were listening earlier to the victim's father talking about not just who he was as a person, and by all accounts he was very friendly, very outgoing, but the things that he did for the community, the things that interested him, that helped other people. Even if there's a conviction in this case for the murder of their son, how does family, and your experience as a defense attorney, deal with the reality of a loss like this?
You know, I always recommend getting professional help, getting professional counseling. Some prosecutors' offices have victims advocates that also help with that and, help them write victims' impact statements. They're going to have an opportunity, if there's a conviction, to go to the sentencing and get some, cathartic relief by talking about their son and what he meant to them and meant to the community.
And Brian, we know obviously the jury is to be fair and impartial, but the reality is there has been evidence and testimony about the sexuality of the victim, and we've heard testimony from the sergeant about understanding from a friend that he was going to hook up with someone. Is there a risk that those things could offend or put off one particular juror, and could that affect the outcome in a case like this?
It can, and that's what voir dire is for. That's why you have to voir dire on every subject that could possibly lead to you discovering some biases by any of the jurors. And, whatever the victim is a group, whatever, group the victim is a member of, and whatever group that the defendant is a member of, are fair questions to ask a jury when you're doing voir dire, so you get the right jury seated that's going to be unbiased and be able to look at this case solely on the evidence and on the evidence alone.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's the reason for the voir dire. And Tad, capital murder without a body. Have you seen that before? Is it unusual or not?
It's unusual, but it's not unheard of. It does happen, and there are convictions in these types of cases.
Yeah, and just quickly, Brian, do you think that it's something that a jury can grab hold of, knowing we don't even know how he did die, to your points earlier?
Yeah, out here in California, we do it all the time. I remember the Scott Peterson case that you're probably well familiar with. We have another case right now going on in South Bay, Chula Vista, a young lady who has not been found and her husband's being charged. So, yeah, we do it out here all the time in California. Juries do understand, and I think they treat it just like any other murder case. It's harder for the prosecution without that evidence of how a person died, but juries have been able to convict without a body.
Yeah, you're right. Robert Durst was another one with his wife. All right. Thank you to Ted Thomas and Brian Watkins for joining us this hour. So appreciate all your expertise. Coming up next, Michael Ayala joining me for more testimony in the missing student murder trial for Timothy Herrington. Stay with us. We'll be right back on your front row seat to justice. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcott.
And I'm Michael Ayala. We're both here today giving you your front row seat to justice. We're in Mississippi this afternoon for the missing student murder trial.
Defendant Timothy Herrington is accused of killing Ole Miss student Jay Lee back in July of 2022.
Prosecutors say Lee, who was well known and he was a member of the LGBTQ plus community, had recently entered into a sexual relationship with Herrington and had been with him in the hours before his disappearance.
Investigators also found evidence that Herrington searched how long it takes to strangle someone just minutes after Lee sent him a message saying that he was en route to his apartment.
All right, let's get you back into court now, where Sergeant Ben Douglas is on direct examination by the state. So let's get back in.
Douglas, what time period did these messages go over? What was the relevant time period for you?
In Central Time, these messages are from 5:17:09 a.m. till 6:03:15 a.m.
And I believe you said in Central Time. Why did you say it like that? How do you receive the data?
These are written in UTC.
What is UTC?
I believe that the term is Universal Time.
Okay. And to get to Central Standard Time, our time, what do you have to do?
You have to subtract, I believe, 5 hours from it.
Okay. And it also appears to be some kind of spreadsheet. Like, why is it that?
This is how it was sent to us. It was sent to us in an Excel spreadsheet. So there's an Excel spreadsheet that has tabs. One of those tabs would be the sending user, the receiving user, the text, and then the timestamp of the actual message.
And just so we're clear, these are the messages between Jay Lee and the Tim Herrington Red Eye 24 account from when to when?
From 5:17:09 a.m. through 6:03:15 a.m.
And at this time, I would move to enter into evidence the Snapchat messages between Jay Lee and the Red Eye 24 Tim Herrington account that he just testified to.
Any objections?
Other than previous objection. All right, that'd be S-28, would that be correct? S-28 will be admitted.
I just want to make sure for the record, I think I got a string of objections, but my relevancy objection is still moving forward. I know, hadn't heard anything about any making it relevant, but I have been objecting to relevance.
Your objection as to relevancy has been noted as well.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I publish to the jury? Okay. Sergeant Douglas, I want us to go through these messages together. Do you have the full messages up with you to read?
I have the exhibit, yes, ma'am.
Okay. If you could, tell us what I'm going to show it up here, and you have for them to see, and you have one so you can look at it. Tell us who is speaking and what is being said, and the time.
Yes, ma'am.
Am I at the beginning, the right
The beginning's at the very bottom. The beginning is at the very bottom, the very last row.
Oh, thank you. So that first message would be it. So, go ahead and tell me, what does it say?
The message says, "Who TF is this?"
And what does that is?
That was Jay Lee to Red Eye.
And you could just go on to the next one and tell us back and forth who is speaking.
So it's mark. He then sends, "What did you
speak into the microphone?
What did you just delete?" He then sends, Jay Lee then sends, "You made it like this." Red Eye responds, "Come back at 5:26 a.m.
Okay. And the next message, who is that from?
Herrington sends, "You coming or nah?" at 5:26:54 a.m.
Continue on, please.
Lee then says no at 5:27. Herrington asks why not. Herrington then sends 2 question marks.
At what time?
At 5:31:43 a.m. Lee says, you just wouldn't even eat my ass 1 hour ago after I cleaned and everything. Then you proceed to nut my then ask if I'm gonna stop harassing you now that you want to stop linking.
What time was that message sent?
That message was sent at 5:34:40 a.m.
Not on this document.
It's at the very top.
Where's the graph? Let me show you. Okay. Now show us where it is on the document and why it's not showing fully on the screen.
At the very top of the document, it has the entire message and then it says which file it is. So it's K140.
Is this K1?
So K140. So in the middle, you can see that the row is K. The text row is K. And at the very left, it says 140. So you can see that the row 140 on the very far left side of the document. And if you move over, you'll see the beginnings of it at the very top of the document. It shows the entirety of what's contained inside of that message.
And why did y'all, when you printed this out, why did you do it like that?
Because we couldn't, I wanted to, in this screenshot, I wanted to get the sender, the receiver, the sender, the text information, and then the time all in one screenshot.
Okay. And so if you could tell me what time that last message you just sent, what time was that sent at?
This was sent at 5:34:40 a.m.
And if I'm reminded, what time did Jay Lee ultimately leave his apartment?
At 5.
Objection to characterization question.
Sit down.
Leave his apartment. What time did Jay? I apologize. I wasn't clear.
No objection.
What time did Jay Lee ultimately leave his apartment?
Around 5:50 a.m.
Okay, so we're at 5:34 a.m. right now. If we could go back to the messages, who sends the next one?
Jay Lee does.
And what does it say?
He says, "You fool."
And go on and continue on with the conversation and the timestamps and who's speaking like before.
After "you fool," it is Jay Lee. He says, like, that was too much. Jay Lee then says, "Have a good night, Tim."
And why was that relevant to you, that message? Have a good night, Tim.
It helps confirm that Tim Herrington is the individual that he is speaking to.
Okay. Continue on saying who is speaking, the time, and what the message content is.
The next message is from Jay Lee, and it says, "Yeah, now it seems like you just trying to lure me over there to beat my ass or something."
And what about the next? And what time was that sent?
That was sent at 5:37:16 a.m.
And what about the next?
The next was sent from Red Eye, which is Tim Herrington, and says, "You tripping, I do feel bad because we cool, I ain't trying to end it like this." The next is from Jay Lee, and it says, how we cool, and you barely want me to text you."
You can please tell me the timestamps as well.
That was sent at 5:39:10 a.m. The next was Herrington. It says, "I'm saying you're a cool person" at 5:39:54 a.m.
Go on.
The next is Jay Lee. That was sent at 5:54 a.m. Herrington responded and said, "A few weeks ago" at 5:41:39 a.m. Lee responded with "raw or condom" at 5:42:14 a.m.
And we'll start again. Oh, the next page. When you pick up to the next conversation and the time and who's speaking, let me know.
So at 5:44:49 a.m., Jay Lee responds, "Only way I see you again is if I'm getting head in the front." At 5:45:14 a.m., Harrington responds, At 5:45:19 a.m., Harrington sends okay. At 5:45:43 a.m., Lee says, "What you keep deleting, and that's it, just okay." At 5:46:21 a.m., Harrington states, I misspelled something, and okay, I'll do it." At 5:48:02 a.m., Lee responds, "YK, or you know, if you try something fast, it won't end good for you, right?" At 5:48:19 a.m., Harrington responds, "WYM, or what you mean, something fast." At 5:48:45 a.m., Lee states, "Like try to hurt me." At 5:50:25 a.m., Harrington responds, "I know." At 5:51:14 a.m., Lee states, "Possibly later tonight." At 5:51:38 a.m., Harrington responds with, "LOL, I just told you I'm leaving later today." At 5:53:48 a.m., Lee states, "LOL, okay, we are fixing to see if you lying." At 5:48:01 a.m., Harrington responds, "Lying about." 5:54:19 a.m., Lee says, "Making it up." 5:54:34, Lee says, "I'm coming." At 5:54:56, Lee states, "What that mean?" At 5:55:39, Lee states, "Has there ever been a cent before?" At 5:55:44 a.m., Lee says, "I'm asking." And at 6:03:15 a.m., Lee says, "Open."
He says, and if we go to the next page.
That's the end of that conversation.
No, Michael, I mean, honestly, we were talking about before you came on this sergeant laying out the breadcrumbs they followed. Yeah. What a great example to me in terms of an investigation, literally following every piece of evidence to figure out who allegedly did this.
Yeah, as we talked about yesterday, timelines are everything.
Yeah.
And these, you know, the video that they showed this jury, these conversations between the defendant and the victim, all lay out up to me what is a very clear timeline.
Yeah, I think it's a compelling case by the state. Well, stay with us. We're going to take a break. When we come back, more testimony from the missing student murder trial for Timothy Herring out of Mississippi.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a jury convicted Melody Farris for the murder of her husband. Now she's facing sentencing. We're breaking down everything you may have missed from today's emotional hearing.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV. Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, tonight, 9, 8 Central, only on Court TV.
Back, folks. Back now to the missing student murder trial out of Mississippi.
Defendant Timothy Herrington is accused of killing Ole Miss student Jay Lee after the two had met up on a July evening in 2022.
Lee's mom began to worry about her son when he hadn't called to wish her a happy birthday, a tradition that she says he never missed.
2 weeks later, Herrington was arrested for Lee's murder, although a body has never been found.
All right, we want to get you folks back into court now, where the jury is hearing from Sergeant Ben Douglas. Let's go back in.
After receiving that information, you said you previously didn't have the full conversation. But did that amount to, when we look at the timeline of when Jay Lee left his apartment and all that, how did that all connect?
This matches exactly with when Jay Lee was leaving to go to Tim Herrington's apartment.
Did you do any other search warrants?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And tell me about the ones of interest in the case.
So there are two that are that we found information that we thought was relevant. The first one is the Dirt to Diamonds search warrant, the Dirt to Diamonds podcast at gmail.com. We did a search warrant for the information associated with that Gmail.
And remind me again, what was Dirt to Diamonds?
Dirt to Diamonds was the same podcast that was used to register the Google Voice number that was then used to register the Red Eye 24 Snapchat account.
And how did you discover it was connected to Tim Herrington?
Both with the recovery phone number and the podcast that he has out for everyone to see.
And that recovery number was his real phone number?
His actual phone number, yes.
So let's start, I guess, with the Dirt to Diamonds. When you applied for that search warrant, did you receive a return?
Yes, I did.
Good, Jerry? Let me know if you're not.
Sergeant Douglas, is this the Google search warrant, or the search warrant you sent for the Dirt to Diamonds to Google?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And has it been, does it accurately represent that search warrant?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Tell me again, what date did you draft that and send it off?
This one was signed on August 3rd. We initially sent the first one. We didn't get almost any data back from the original. We didn't write in the search warrant. We didn't explain each individual application that Google has, and so they didn't give us anything back for things like YouTube or Google Search or Google Voice, things of that nature. So we wrote into the search warrant all the applications that Google uses and provides, all the services that they provide, the applications that they run and have. We made sure that those were in the search warrant so we could get information associated with those things from Google. And so we wrote a second one. So the first one we wrote on July 25th. The second one we wrote on August 3rd.
And July 25th, was that be the day that the Red Eye, like you got Tim Herrington's Red Eye messages?
July, that would have been the day that we got the return from Snapchat.
Okay. So see that full conversation that we just
Yes.
went over?
Yes.
Okay. This time I would like to mark for identification the Google search warrant to Dirt to Diamonds podcast. Or, yeah.
29, Kathy.
Wait. He's out of order. Out of order. Brief indulgence. This is the right here. This stuff. And were you able to get information from that Google search warrant? Did you receive something in return?
Yes, I did.
Sergeant Douglas, is this what you received in return? Could you identify that for us?
Mark for identification, I think.
Let him identify it and then mark it, and we'll go from there, okay?
This is the Google search history associated with Dirt to Diamonds podcast at gmail.com.
Okay. And what was that time frame that you got that for?
We got it up to, it's written in the warrant.
I'm not objecting to it, what Mark, I have an objection to it. She's not trying to introduce it.
I'm going to have him do some further identification for the relevant time frame, mark it for ID, and then I am going to finish.
She's going to try to introduce it.
You're trying to introduce it after that.
I would need to review my search warrant to know the entire time frame that I have.
Handing the witness what has been previously marked for identification as the S-29.
The time frame was May 28th, 2022 until July 22nd, 2022.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move to have the Google search warrant returned, marked for identification.
Okay. Be marked for ID.
Sergeant Douglas, I'm handing you what's been marked for ID as State's Exhibit 30, or State's Exhibit 30, yes. Tell me, when you got that return, did it contain any messages that were relevant?
So these are searches. This is the search history of...
I apologize. Thank you for letting me know.
Yes, ma'am. So there is a search.
The answer should be yes or no, Your Honor, at this time. Object to the non-responsive answer. The question was, did you...
Go ahead and repeat your question anyway.
Yes. Sergeant Douglas, did it contain any messages that were relevant to the disappearance of Jay Lee, Tim Herrington, anything?
Yes, it contained searches that were relevant to the case.
Okay. What was, if you could tell me the time frame of the searches?
On July 8th, 2022 at 5:56 a.m., Tim Herrington Googled how long, or Dirt to Diamonds podcast at gmail.com.
Wait, hold on. Now that he said they were relevant, I would just move to enter it into evidence at this time, Your Honor.
Object, Your Honor, at this time.
Hang on a second. You're asking that S30 be introduced into evidence this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
What's your objection?
Your Honor, I'd like to be outside the presence of jury.
y'all step that way. Be a good time to take a break anyway, okay? So let's all take this short break and then come back.
All right, good information, Judge, being given by this witness, even though there seems to be some disorganization. Not sure it's problematic in terms of the credibility of the information he ultimately is providing.
I agree that the information sounds very credible and does give evidence suggesting, yes, this defendant committed the crime. But I think if I were a juror, I might be a little bit annoyed with some of the things that don't appear to be well organized by the state in presenting the testimony and presenting the exhibit.
Yeah, and you never want that because you never know what effect that ultimately might have on how they look at the case.
You're right.
And the information you're providing. All right.
Yes. Now, let's head back to Mississippi. We're going to bring you more testimony in the missing student murder trial for Timothy Herrington.
Sergeant Douglas, you could, at this time, Your Honor, I would like to have Exhibit 30 admitted into evidence.
All right, over the objection, counsel, I'm going to admit the Exhibit 30 into evidence.
No, basically, my previously stated.
Previously stated, I think we're okay on the other.
Yes, I do.
You already handed it back. Your Honor, may I publish the jury?
Oh, you may.
Okay. Sergeant Douglas, I believe where we left off was you had sent off a search warrant. Explain to us, like, what we're going to be looking at.
So these are Google search results that came back in the activity of dirttodiamondspodcast@gmail.com.
And how did that relate to Tim Herrington?
This is the email address that was on the Red Eye 24 Snapchat account that had his phone number as the recovery phone number and all to identify that it is his account.
Okay. And looking at these search results, could you tell me if there's a relevant one? Or relevant? Tell me about the relevant ones.
There are a few relevant ones on the sheet that you have.
Tell me where to go.
Let me ask you this. Do you want all of those introduced, or do you want just relevant ones introduced?
Yeah, the entire package. It's just that we're just going to go. He's going to go to specific ones to point out, but the entire package will be there for.
Your Honor, I understand that you may want to introduce the entire package, and I've had an opportunity to look at some of them, but I don't know what else is there 10 days prior. I don't know what the time frame is. Is it relevant to the time frame in question?
I would like to anything that you feel is relevant. Let's narrow it down to that. Either side feel is relevant. I'd like to narrow it down to that time frame.
At some point in time.
At some point in time. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So, explain to us the time frame that these Google searches cover. And these are Google searches, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, explain to us the time frame that this covers.
This would cover the entire time frame of the search warrant. So, May. May 28th to July 22nd of 2022.
Your Honor, I think that I hate to keep jumping up, but surely at some point in time, the council can get together and not take some stuff.
I would like for y'all to try to do that.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, we don't plan to go through every message. We're going to go through a few. Sergeant Douglas, take me to the date of Jay Lee's disappearance. Tell me about the relevant searches on July 8th, 2022.
So on July 8th of 2022 at 5:56 a.m., there is a Google search for how long does it take to strangle someone, Gabby Petito.
Okay, so July 8th.
That's on the 7th page of this document.
Okay. Each second. These aren't timed. Is it? Can you? Okay. So, let me do this. Right here. See can you see the little arrow?
Yes.
The little red arrow? Okay. Tell me, what time is that?
That is 5:56 a.m. Central.
And what time does it come in? Like what time is was listed on the searches?
It comes in that universal time, that UTC, and it says 10:56:54.
Could you explain a little bit like what universal UTC time is?
It's just another time zone.
So just to clarify that Google search, how long does it take to strangle someone, Gabby Petito, was by Red Eye, and there was an email address, and that is the email address belonging to the defendant. They're connecting all the dots.
Yeah, they established that Red Eye is the defendant, Mr. Harrington, so they've made that connection.
Yeah, they sure have. All right, we'll have more testimony from the missing student murder trial for Timothy Herrington in Mississippi coming up next. Stay tuned.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a jury convicted Melody Farris for the murder of her husband. Now she's facing sentencing. We're breaking down everything you may have missed from today's emotional hearing.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
There are lots of cases that we'd like to look at. And you know what it means. You know what you did, right? I killed him. And I prayed to God. That's not really how God works.
Interview with a Killer. New season coming in 2025, only on Court TV.
More testimony in the missing student murder trial. The defendant, Sheldon Timothy Herrington, is charged with capital murder in the presumed death of Jimmie J. Lee.
Still on the stand is Sergeant Ben Douglas, who is testifying to online searches made by the defendant. Let's get you right back into court.
When you moved into our time zone, what time was this search made?
The search was made at 5:56 a.m. on that Central Time.
And it said, how long does it take to strangle someone, Gabby Petito? Were you able to learn anything? Do you know who Gabby Petito is?
I'm kind of familiar, but not really.
It's interpreting the content of the message objectively.
Yeah, well, I asked if you don't.
I'm gonna, if he knows who Gabby Petito is, I'm gonna let him ask, because I don't answer, because I don't. Go ahead.
Okay.
I don't have intimate knowledge of any of it.
Okay.
I know the name from that. There was a big case about it.
Okay. Did you discover anything about this search?
As in what?
As in, how long does it take to strangle someone, Gabby Petito? About what happens when you search? How long does it? Tell me.
Yes. So whenever you search, how long does it take to strangle someone? This is the first thing that pops up in the Google search bar, the autocomplete. So whenever you're typing things in the Google and they autocomplete, this is the first one that pops up.
Okay. So as you're typing that, it autocompletes with the name Gabby Petito.
Yes.
Okay. And what you said that this was what time when you converted to our time?
5:56 a.m.
And if you could remind me, what time was Jay Lee's account texting open to Tim Harrington's Red Eye account? I believe they said that was the final message. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay.
The time of open was at 6:03:15 a.m.
Okay. And was there any further message between the two accounts after 6:03 a.m.?
No, ma'am.
And this one was at 5:56 a.m., the Google search?
This Google search was at 5:56 a.m., yes.
Okay. Also on is there any searches that took place after this that were of relevance?
Yes, ma'am.
You could tell me where to go to find those.
The very first page on the back of it.
And
on July 10th, it'll say July 10th at 8:10:44 UTC, which would be 3:10 p.m.
Okay. Am I the arrow pointing to the right?
Yes, ma'am. He searches the Molly Bar Apartments. UPD on the 10th released the press notice that Jay Lee was missing. this same day around this same time. At this time, UPD had not found the vehicle yet. We didn't know where it was at. And once that notice comes out from UPD, he Googles Molly Bar Apartments at 3:10 p.m.
Right. And
which happens to be where the car is eventually located.
were you involved in the creation of that press release?
I was. I created the press release and sent it to Lieutenant McGuire to then submit.
And what day and time did you, was it sent out, if you can remember?
I remember it was sent out on July 10th. I know that I sent it to Shayla sometime afternoon.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
Sometime afternoon is whenever I sent it to Shayla. I'm not sure when she clicked send on the post to put it up.
And may I have this marked for ID as State's Exhibit
31.
31. I'm handing the witness what has now been marked for ID as State's Exhibit 31. Do you recognize that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, folks, we're coming to the top of the hour. We're going to take a break, but coming up, more testimony in the missing student murder trial for Timothy Herrington. So please keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala.
And I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott. Court TV is covering 3 big cases in Georgia. It was sentencing day in the burn pile murder trial of Melody Ferris. While she didn't testify in her own defense during the guilt phase, she had plenty to say before she was sentenced for the death of her husband. She told the court it was the couple's son, Scott, who committed the murder.
In New York City, police released new images of the person they believe shot and killed the CEO of United Healthcare CEO, and they're asking for your help finding him.
And in Mississippi, testimony continues in the missing student murder trial of Timothy Herrington Jr. Herrington is accused of killing Jimmie J. Lee III back in July of 2022. Lee reportedly texted Herrington that he was on his way to Herrington's apartment.
Prosecutors say minutes after that text was sent, the defendant Googled how long it takes to strangle someone. Lee was never seen again, and his body has never been found. Testimony is continuing at this hour. A sergeant with the campus police department is still on the stand. He's on direct examination. Let's head back to court.
This is the document that was released on July 10th as a press release for the fact that J. Lee had not been seen or heard from since July 8th.
And is that the one that you created?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And at this time, I would move to enter the press release into evidence.
Any objections?
No.
All right. It'll be admitted.
What number is that?
31. If I'm counting right. Kathy, give me the high sign.
And may I publish to the jury?
You may.
Your Honor, I want to state that I hope the press isn't getting the fact that our plastic's falling down on the window.
Yeah, I know. What?
Maybe the Board of Supervisors need to find out.
Yeah, we can get some spray paint this afternoon. Y'all, I think everybody but me can see, so we're all right. But it shows me my best light, I think, don't y'all, this profile view?
Sergeant Douglas, could you tell me what was What information did y'all have at the time of the release of this press release about like Jay Lee's disappearance?
We had the video from housing that showed that he had left, when he had left, what he was wearing when he left. We had information from the university that gave information about his car, and we had information about him that showed his date of birth, height, how much he weighed, things of that nature.
And if you could, I'm going to point to sort of the missing person details. What was Jay Lee's height and weight?
He was 5'7", and weighed 120 pounds.
I'm going to go back to the searches. That very first page, if you could look for me at the top, the third, or that very first page, the first one from the bottom, or not the first one, but the second one from the bottom.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you please read what that search is?
It says Ole Miss student found in lake.
And what time of day was that search?
4:32 p.m.
On July 10th?
Yes.
And the next one?
The next one is a link to people.com, the Ali Castile murder.
Who is Ali Castile?
Ali Castile is the victim of a murder in Lafayette County.
Was she also an Ole Miss student?
She was.
And the last few, and what time was that one at?
4:32 p.m.
And the last few searches, are they all about that? Like the top search, what's that one?
They are, there's a New York Post article about it, and then there's a KTLA article about it.
I'm going to go back to search warrants. I know you got the Google one for Tim Herrington's Google account. Did you get another one?
I did.
And what was that one?
I got one for Meta, so Facebook and Instagram. I sent one to Meta.
No, it's too big. Search name. Oh, here it is. Apologize. Yeah, we don't have this.
And Michael, we've talked about a little bit just the organization by the state. They're getting their documents together. They're asking for the court's pleasure to allow them a moment to get it together, to stay organized. That's why we're just waiting as the witness has not asked something.
Yeah, and it's happening more than you would like if you're presenting a case to a jury. Generally, you'll meet with these witnesses beforehand at some point, explain to them direction you want to be going in, some directions that the defense might be going in. So have those particular records ready so that when we call upon them, they're there. But again, it seems like this may have been a complicated case.
32. And I'll have him identify them. Sergeant Douglas, I have painted you what's previously been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 32.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recognize that State's Exhibit 32?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, and is that the search warrant that you did for Tim Herrington's accounts?
It is. This is the first one. We did a second one. So the first one we sent, and Meta did not want to comply with it, and we sent this one initially on July 22nd. They refused it, so we returned it on August 23rd, and we got a second one on August 5th signed. We also returned that one on August 23rd.
Okay. And let me make sure I got there's two of them. No wonder there were two of them. This must be the other one. Is this a search warrant that you did?
Yes.
So the one that I just gave you is the search warrant that...
That is the one that was signed on July 22nd.
And when did you get the next one?
I signed the next one, or I got the next one signed
Yeah, when you got
on
the
August 5th. We received the data on August 15th.
Okay, so this is one. State's Exhibit 32 is going to be the first search warrant for ID, and this is going to be the second one. I have it marked correctly right now. State's Exhibit 32. Handing the witness what has been identified now as State's Exhibit 33. Do you recognize that, Sergeant Douglas?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, and is that second search warrant you were just referring to?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay, and you sent it to Tim Herrington's Instagram and Facebook?
Yes.
Okay, what were those Instagram and Facebooks?
The handle for the Facebook was timmy.harrington.3, and the Instagram was Tim the CEO.
And did you receive a return from that one?
I did.
Okay. And was it a large return?
It was. There was a decent amount of data on the return. We got names, addresses, search history, telephone numbers, IP addresses, things of that nature.
Okay. And did you review that entire return and pull portions to talk about here today?
Yes, we did.
I have this marked for Exhibit 34 for ID.
All right. right, we're going to step aside here and take a break. But before we do, we have an update in the burn pile murder trial of Melody Ferris.
Ferris was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole today. Last month, you may recall, a jury found her guilty of shooting and killing her husband, Gary, and then burning his body in a fire pit on their property in 2018.
Ferris spoke at her sentencing hearing today and blamed it all on her son. Take a listen.
Not only did I not do this, I know who did. I know Scott killed his father. He took my husband, the father of Chris, Emily, and Amanda. Judge Cannon, I beg of you for help. As one parent to another, help me get justice for Gary and my family. A mother, or at least not this mother, does not blame her child unless she knows he did it. Not thinks, knows. And I would never sit here and let the attorneys lay blame to him if I didn't know.
Blaming her son was not expected. The judge said Ferris would need to spend at least 30 years in prison before becoming eligible for parole, but the judge acknowledged that due to her age, that is likely a life sentence. We're going to take that break down. When we come back, we're going to get you back to more testimony in the missing student murder trial of Timothy Herrington Jr. So stay here with us on your front row seat to justice.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a jury convicted Melody Ferris for the murder of her husband. Now she's facing sentencing. We're breaking down everything you may have missed from today's emotional hearing.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
It's the biggest story that we're covering.
He is the boogeyman.
Lori Daybell.
She said, I will have you destroyed.
She's got another murder trial coming up.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
All right, we're going to head back to court in just a moment, but first, we have developing news out of New York City in the shooting death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Police released new photos of the suspected shooter without a mask. There he is. The images were captured on surveillance video in the lobby of a hostel on the Upper West Side.
Law enforcement officials also said today that live round and shell casings recovered at the scene had the words deny, defend, and depose written on them. Security camera video showed the killer approach Thompson from behind and shoot him several times Wednesday morning. The 50-year-old CEO was walking to the company's annual investor conference at a Hilton hotel in Midtown when he was ambushed.
Now, police are calling it a targeted attack and say the man in this picture is a person of interest. Anyone with information is asked to call Crime Stoppers.
Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft is in New York City covering this developing story. She will join us with a live report next hour.
All right, we're going to head back now to Mississippi in testimony in the missing student murder trial of Timothy Herrington Jr. Sergeant Ben Douglas with the University of Mississippi Police Department is still on direct examination. Let's get you back inside that court.
Exhibit 34 entered into evidence.
Second objection. Previous objection be noted. I'm going to admit it into evidence.
Your Honor, may I publish to the jury?
You may.
Sergeant Douglas, tell me about what page to go to for any searches that piqued your interest.
So on the first page, on 7/10/2022, the UTC time is 10/21/37/36. He searched on Facebook Tony Faris. The UTC time converted to Central would be 4:37 p.m.
Okay. And so what would that time be in Central Time?
4:37 p.m.
And what day was that?
July 10th.
And who is Tony Faris?
Tony Faris was the lawyer that represented the defendant in the Allie Castile murder.
Allie Castile is a student from Ole Miss.
From Ole Miss, the same one in the search history from Google around the same time frame.
Oh, so from when we were looking at the Google from the Allie Castile murder, these are done how close in time?
Within the same minute.
I'm sorry, continue.
Within a minute, or within the same time.
Were there any other searches that I should look at here? We should show the jury.
So you go to the second page, halfway down, on the 11th, you'll see 044635 UTC.
See it? Mm-hmm.
He searched on Facebook, Oxford, Mississippi Police Department at 11:46 p.m. That's on July 10th.
And what is that time when converted to Pacific, our time?
11:46 p.m.
11:46. And now what search do I need to go to next?
If you look one down from that, at 03:02:18 at 10:02 p.m. on 7/11/22. It says Ole Miss Police. He searched Ole Miss Police. Direct underneath that one, he also searched Jimmie Lee at 4:01 a.m. on the 12th. If you go further down, or on the next page, you'll see that he searches on Facebook Oxford, Mississippi Police multiple times on the 13th and on the 14th. And on the 15th.
And tell me, like, what days are these?
These are the days.
Like, what day of a year? What month of the year?
Yes.
I apologize.
Yes.
The month
So
of
this would be July 7/15, so July 15th of 2022.
And he's searching what?
He's repeatedly searching either Jimmie Lee, or he's searching Oxford Police, or Find Jimmie Lee, or Ole Miss Police, keeping up with the investigation, it seems like, by looking over and over again for Jimmie Lee, Oxford Police, Jimmie Lee, Ole Miss, Jimmie J. Lee.
And what, do you remember, do you know what day Timothy Herrington ultimately was arrested for the disappearance of Jimmie Lee?
The 22nd.
And does he continue to make searches like that up until he's arrested?
Yes, ma'am.
Brief indulgence.
Okay.
During the brief indulgence, that's what she asked when she has to get herself organized with all the exhibits. We want to bring in criminal defense attorney Laura Yaretsi. And Laura, thank you so much for joining us both here today. Listen, it's all coming together for me today as the state's presenting more evidence following the breadcrumbs, putting together that the defendant The victim headed to the defendant's. That's where he was last seen going. He disappeared after that. How do you think the state's doing?
I mean, they're doing what they would typically do, right? They're establishing the foundational stuff. They're especially right now with the detective. Basically, they had him go through, all the searches, because the searches are going to show that the defendant, as the sergeant testified, was keeping up with, the latest updates on the case and the search and what was going on. It just shows that he was interested enough in the case, although that wouldn't necessarily be surprising if he was in a relationship with this individual, right? So, but then it also goes to show that if he was really, truly guilty of this crime, that he was interested to see what the police had uncovered and what was going on with the investigation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because all the little bits of evidence have really a harmless explanation, but when you put them all together, I think it's pretty powerful evidence. But I want to ask you this, Laura. He searches for how long does it take to strangle someone? We find out today from this detective that actually it was how long to strangle someone, then Gabby Petito after it. Now, everyone who's watched Court TV is familiar with the Gabby Petito case. So I'm asking you, does that make a difference? The fact that the Gabby Petito was at the end of that sentence. We've sort of made it seem as though it's just, how long does it take to strangle someone? But there's a Gabby Petito at the end of the search.
Of course it makes a difference. I mean, if you're on the jury or you're the defense attorney, what are you going to do with that information? If it was just, he was searching how long does it take to strangle somebody, and Jay Lee was on his way to his house, then that's a pretty damning evidence, right? But if he's searching about the Petito case, which everybody knows about and everybody's interested in that case, then that's an innocent explanation and that's what defense attorneys do in trials, where they try to get the jury to focus on not just the negative or the inculpatory, incriminating explanation for the evidence, but they also point out, especially when it's circumstantial evidence, that they have to also look at the innocent explanation for that, and they need to go to the innocent explanation as long as it's a reasonable explanation.
Again, reasonable. Just trying to sort of knock those bricks away from the case that they're trying to build. Yeah. And that's the way you sort of achieve a not guilty verdict. All right, Laura, stand by. We do need to step aside. When we return, Sergeant Ben Douglas will be on cross-examination. Keep it here on your front row seat to justice.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcott.
And I'm Michael Ayala. In day 3 of testimony in the missing student murder trial of Timothy Herrington Jr., a detective with the University of Mississippi Police Department testified about evidence that he found that linked Herrington to the victim, Jimmie J. Lee.
Lee texted Herrington that he was coming over to see him on July 8th of 2022. Prosecutors say within minutes of that text message, the defendant Googled how long to strangle someone.
Surveillance video showed Lee leaving his apartment that morning dressed in a robe, slippers, and a hair bonnet. And then later, more surveillance video showed his car arriving at Herrington's apartment complex, but never leaving.
University of Mississippi Police Sergeant Ben Douglas is now still on the stand, but now under cross-examination. Let's go back in together.
Detective Douglas, I'm Kevin Horan. How you doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well. I want to ask you a couple of things about your episodes involving the search warrants. You remember how many you did?
I don't remember the total number. I think it was somewhere around 25, though.
And your investigation began, I guess, as a missing person, and then y'all kind of transitioned into assisting or OPD?
Yes, sir. So we started it as a welfare concern. The welfare concern, whenever we found the car in Oxford Police Department's jurisdiction, we began helping OPD because we believed that something most likely occurred outside of our jurisdiction because the car was located at Molly Bar Trails.
Okay, I want to hand you a document and tell me if you can identify Have a mark for identification. I'll attempt to return on JB. I'm going to hand you and see if you can identify your signature. Does that represent the return on the entertainment center out of Mr. Lee's car as a result of
Yes, sir.
initial investigation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have it marked. I mean, proceeding the evidence at this time.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
That's going to be D35. That's return of J. Lee search call. Return.
Your Honor, I just want to be clear. I have no objection to the return. Actually, no objection.
Okay. But that's the return of search warrant of J. Lee's car, right?
Second, I'd like to have marked for identification return on, I believe it is
All right, well, they're doing their little housekeeping there, Judge. I just want to ask you, because I know you said that today's evidence is really the evidence that started to turn you towards believing that the case here was a strong one for the prosecution.
Yes, and I think it's because of the timeline. You've mentioned how important it is, and the videos can help with the timeline, and it's that piece, knowing when he left his apartment, he didn't quite close his door all the way. He left his dog inside the apartment, and we know, according to other witnesses, he took his dog everywhere, Michael. So you would think he'd be coming back. To my point, you had testimony that he stayed in touch with everyone, all of these things. And then the part that really sealed it for me today is knowing his car was in the defendant's parking lot and he was never seen getting back in that vehicle.
Yeah, and we've seen many, many cases where you're the last person to see someone alive. That is strong evidence in and of itself.
I think you're
hard
right.
to get around it as a defense attorney.
And then you mentioned the wheelbarrow and the shovel that he got from his parents' house.
We'll see that later on in their case. All right, looks like things are getting back going. Let's get back into court.
To Burla themselves, they sent the entire report to Burla to attempt to get them to reconstruct it. And whenever the things that they sent back, the reconstructions that they sent back, they said were not fit. The reconstructed data should only be used as.
Hold on a second. My question was, did you have a report in your file that your officer, in your department, Shayla McGuire, indicated that it was all 10 minutes?
I'm not Shayla McGuire. I don't know what you're in there.
You have a report in your file that indicates that, Detective.
Objection, Your Honor. He said he doesn't know what she has in her reports. That's the answer. The witnesses answered the question.
Yes or no? That's all I'm asking. You have a report in your file.
What's the objection? I didn't understand it.
Asked and answered.
As to which question? Does he have it or not? Has he answered the question? Does he have it in his file?
He said he doesn't know what she has in her report. That's what he said.
Okay. I'll handle that with Ms. McGuire. All right. Now, I want you to pull to this page right here on 07/08/2022.
Which page?
It'll have the bottom of the page. It's about 2 in, I think.
07/08/22. Is it this one?
That's correct, I believe. And it's 17:30/8/02 timestamped at the bottom. Are you to that page? Next.
This is 17/26/01.
Very bottom of the page. time step 1738.
It's not at the bottom of this page, is it? It's at the bottom of
next page.
It's at the top of the next page, isn't it?
Okay, that's fine. Go to the timestamp that you can find in this report. 07, 08, 0325, 59. You see that entry?
0738. What?
07, 08, 22 at 0325, 59.
There we go, right there.
All right. Read that entry on that report.
So this entry says door and then driver door was opened at 2022-07-08-03-2559 opened 07-08-2022-03-2559 and then local.
What is the entry below that?
The entry below that says door and then driver door was opened at 2022-07-08-04-1226, then opened, and then 07-08-2022-04-1226, and then local.
What is the next line?
It says door and then driver door was opened at 2022-07-08-04-4735, opened 07-08-2022-04-4735, and then local.
Next entry.
I got to tell you, it still never ceases to amaze me how much digital information there is about everything
you do, including us, right? Can you imagine if somebody got your phone and saw everything? It's a lot of information. Let's step aside. We'll have more of Sergeant Douglas's cross-examination when we return with Court TV Live.
Coming soon to Court TV.
It's the biggest story that we're covering.
He is the boogeyman.
Lori Daybell.
She said, I will have you destroyed.
She got another murder trial coming up.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
We will not stop fighting. We have no quit.
Sean Diddy Combs arrested on a federal indictment.
The high-stakes trials you don't want to miss. Coming soon. Only on Court TV.
Let's get you back inside the courtroom. University of Mississippi Sergeant Ben Douglas is still under cross-examination by the defense.
It says driver door closed on the next entry on 079 at 22 at what time?
At 044733.
Thank you. And what time would that be the next day?
This just says 044733. It doesn't have like any sort of time standard on it.
We'll get back to it. Detective, I want to ask you about a couple other search warrants you did. Did you do a search warrant on the automobile of Mr. Herrington?
No, I did not.
You did not do that?
No.
Did you assist in that search warrant?
No, I did not.
So, when did your investigation conclude?
When did my investigation conclude?
UPD's investigation conclude, and y'all became...
we began helping OPD on the 10th whenever the vehicle was recovered. But our investigation hadn't concluded. We continued to assist.
That's a bad term. I guess my question is, when did y'all become associated with, basically, I know you didn't turn it over to Oxford PD, but y'all working on it together. What date was that?
That would have been the 10th, whenever the vehicle was found that night.
And would it be a fair statement to say when Jay Lee disappeared initially, And even up until the time that Mr. Herrington was arrested, the activity that you talked about today, as far as Mr. Herrington searching certain things, that was not unique to him. You searched a lot of other people's messages and things like that on Facebook, students and other people, members of my family. You would find the same and similar type search engines, would you not? Search conduct.
Objection and speculation.
I sustain the objection. Rephrase your question anyway.
Did y'all search anybody else's Facebook pages before? Did you do any searches of any Facebook pages besides Mr. Herrington?
No.
So you don't know whether or not Jose Reyes or any of the other people that may have known Jay Lee or been associated with Jay Lee had similar searches on their Facebook and inquisitive comments and things like that, or searches. You can't say that they didn't do the same, right?
No, I can't say that they didn't do the same.
Okay. Now, you identified the. Can you tell me how far back the Snapchat search went?
I'd have to have the Snapchat search warrant. It'll have the dates on it.
You only did July the 8th?
I'd have to have the Snapchat search warrant. I need to have the dates that are on that warrant.
When you searched Jay Lee's Snapchat, you found information on there, I assume, based on what I've been provided, that there was a lot of conversations between Jay Lee and other people that he had apparently had sexual relationships with, contact with, things of that nature, right?
I know he was speaking to a lot of people. I don't remember the nature of every single message, so I'm not sure.
Appeared by the nature of those conversations, the possibility or probability existed that he was in a relationship with a number of different people.
Objection, speculation.
Part of his investigation, right?
I'm going to ask him what he remembers from that Snapchat.
I just remember viewing it. I don't remember finding anything inside of his Snapchat that we marked down.
Thought was remarkable at all?
Yeah.
Did you find any conversations in those chats, any messages or anything similar to any of the type of conversations that you've identified?
All right, let's bring back in our guest. Still with us, criminal defense attorney Laura Yaretzi. And Laura, what we're seeing in this cross-examination is what we've seen basically throughout this trial by the defense. They really have to sort of paint this picture that maybe this victim had a number of relationships, someone else might have gotten involved or intercepted his visit over to his friend. A lot of other things could have happened. And I wonder if they need to be careful that that could maybe upset a juror or two or cause some problems.
Look, anything any defense attorney or a prosecutor does may upset a juror, but you can't, strategize your case or ask your questions that way. You have to ask some of these questions. He has to bring this up because this is basically your reasonable doubt. Why wouldn't he ask questions about some of the other relationships he may have had? Maybe he had some issues with one of these guys. The other question he was asking was, if the sergeant searched, to see what other friends of the missing Lee had maybe done on their Facebook or on their Instagram or on their Snapchat. Basically saying, maybe what his client had done, his searches were very much innocent and other people would have done the same. But this detective never bothered to do anything, never bothered to look at other people's searches because he was targeting and he was fixated on this defendant. All of this, he's trying to bring, all these basically these are all seeds of reasonable doubt.
So the seeds of reasonable doubt and talking to the witnesses about sexuality and hooking up and the facts of the case, are those things, though, that also could potentially offend a juror if you go after that too hard or you focus on that? Is that a risk?
Yes, maybe a juror is going to be offended, but I haven't seen him going after it very hard, not yet. All we saw was just a couple of questions, and he may stop there. I don't know how much more information he has. Maybe there are some individuals who had an issue with Jimmie Lee that he knows about and he's going to get to. Again, it's not very clear. At this point, he's only asked, maybe 1 or 2 questions about it. And if he stops there and if that's all he has, then that's fine. The seeds are there, for the, or the information is there for the jury to jump on if necessary. If there's a couple of people who are on his side, they can go to that, hang on to that. But again, he's doing his job. We'll see later what else he does.
And of course, voir dire is where you can get into those issues to make sure you get a fair and impartial jury. Thank you, Laurie Aretzian, for joining us tonight.
All right, folks, stick around. Coming up in our next hour, we're going to get you back to court for more testimony in the missing student murder trial of Timothy Herrington Jr. All right, turning now to Mississippi, the missing student murder trial of Timothy Herrington is Court TV's newest live trial. Herrington is charged with killing Ole Miss student Jimmie J. Lee III. Now, Lee disappeared on July 8th of 2022, but his body has never been found. A judge declared him dead in October at the request of his parents. Now, according to investigators, the defendant and victim saw each other twice during the morning hours of the day that Lee disappeared, and the men had sexual interaction. They also say just minutes after Lee texted that he was on his way to Herrington's apartment, Herrington searched online for how long it takes to strangle someone. Herrington has been out on $250,000 bond. Right now, Sergeant Ben Douglas with the University of Mississippi Campus Police Department is still on the stand. We're going to look at what lawyers are sort of presenting outside now or arguing about outside the jury's presence. So let's get you back into court.
Without it keep from being confusing, I think I just showed the highlighted portions of what I've got of all these text messages, chats.
Are these out of something that's already been introduced into evidence?
It is.
Which exhibit are we talking about?
Talking about
Snapchat or
chat.
Your Honor, what we introduced was the search warrant and then of the Snapchat, and then we introduced a portion of the chat from that search warrant. That's what's been introduced. What Mr. Creekmore was referring to was the issue of third-party guilt. This is a separate issue that as to hearsay. The case law says that when criminal defendants, it says that.
Don't run that rabbit right yet. Now we'll find out what he's offering in the testimony, and then I'll have use for more information. But I want to see what he's offering first, and then that will.
Your Honor, I can state into the record. I think it'd be easier to do that, and I'm not going to identify the recipient of the information because I don't think it's relevant.
What was said
by J. Lee.
By J. Lee. Or you can tell me what the conversation was. Just don't give me any names at this time, anyway.
Okay. An individual texts Sucker for Jay and says, "Whoa, physical assault already?" Sucker for Jay response, "I want to punch you." Your Honor, it does have other conversations placed in context as far as relationship, and I don't think the content.
Is that there's a lot of people in the world I want to punch, but not in a sexual nature. If that makes any sense anyway. I don't know if there's enough information there to decide what the nature of it is.
Again, that's the basis of it. There's additional language in there that indicates that they're talking about a part of your body. It's all kind of sexual.
Just show it to me anyway.
That particular page down to the blue part. Just read that whole page.
Plot or into the blue part.
Above the blue part.
And I'm not clear. Is this already? What are you referring to? Is this marked for ID?
It's not marked. It says chat. So it's got the sucker for whatever medium that the handle, if you see B, was sucker for J. Lee, is it, whichever one that was.
This has already been received into evidence?
I don't know how much of it y'all put, I don't know how much of the documents y'all put into evidence.
No, I'm asking about what you're referring to.
I don't know. I don't know how much y'all put in and whether this has been introduced or not anyway.
If he could establish what he's...
If it's in evidence, it's in evidence.
In evidence.
If it's not in evidence, we've got something to argue about.
This is in evidence.
All Let me see.
No. It's ID'd at this time.
It's not in evidence. Your Honor, we introduced the Snapchat. I apologize. We introduced the Snapchat search
Right,
warrant.
so the attorneys are arguing outside the presence of the jury. The defense is trying to get in, and this sounds like some text between the victim in this case, Jay Lee, and an unknown third party. Actually, the party is known, it's just not being mentioned. The name is not being used in court. That seem to have a sexual connotation, as well as perhaps some violence. You heard them talk about the fact that the person texts, this unknown person texts, whoa, physical assault already. And Jay Lee says, I want to punch you. So there's that. And again, it's all part of the defense's strategy to suggest maybe someone else could have been responsible for this crime. All right, looks like they've worked things out. Let's get back into court.
There's clearly a statement in there that says, you better not try to do anything, it's not going to turn out good for you. Well,
first of all, I hate to interrupt his argument, but he started out wrong. The conversation between Jay Lee...
Let me finish. Can I finish?
Hang on. Let me see. Do what now?
The conversation between Tim Herrington and Jay Lee was begun by Tim Herrington. That was a misstatement of the law. I mean, of the facts.
Yeah.
Just give me to what was said. What was said that you find that you have a right to introduce this?
In the conversation, there's two things that basically the theme that they're trying to lay out is that our client solicited him to come back over there is in their particular evidence that they've introduced at this time. Included in that is a statement wherein Jay Lee, according to their evidence, made a comment to our client about it's not going to turn out well for you if it goes bad. That's in not only that, but the discovery material that's been provided on other media, which they're going to assume they're going to get in at some point in time. In this particular evidence that they provided in discovery, he's identified as that he did two subpoenas and one of them was Snapchats of Sucker for Jay says, I got a pitch, and you better not be trying to pull a fast one on me about what I'm saying. He's talking about conversations about hooking up and getting together. That's consistent with what they've already introduced to negate.
I don't see that. I don't see that that's. I'm having a hard time with that. Those particular words, fine and revel. You don't pull a fast one on me. I don't find it to be relevant to the information that the state has put forward. There's some more documents there that you wished I may find a different ruling on.
Your Honor, if I could,
go ahead.
Basically, if I can get the exhibit.
While he's doing that, Your Honor, I just want to clarify. When what we introduced, it starts off with, who is this? Jay did not start that conversation. Someone said, who is this?
I've ruled for you. I'd hush if I was you.
I would state, in paragraph 84 of the Garland case, it said that the defense presented no evidence at all that that person that they were trying to bring in a statement against had been implicated in any way with respect to the crime. And I think that's what we have here. There's no implication that this person, whoever they are, it's not in court today, has any implication in what's going on here today.
I don't necessarily think that that's been offered for that purpose, but at the same time, I don't think the statement that we just made is anyhow relevant in this particular case. There may be some of those highlighted that you have that are, but I don't think that one is anyway.
Your Honor, again, conversation.
All right, so that particular set of text messages the judge says isn't relevant. He's not going to allow them in. There are other sets of texts that he may rule differently, he said, when we get to that point. But as of right now, this set, not coming in. All right, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, Sergeant Douglas continues his testimony on cross-examination in the missing student murder trial of Timothy Herrington Jr. Keep it here on your front row seat to justice.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a jury convicted Melody Farris for the murder of her husband. Now she's facing sentencing. We're breaking down everything you may have missed from today's emotional hearing.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
There are lots of cases that we'd like to look at. And you know what it means. You know what you did, right? I killed him. And I prayed to God. That's not really how God works.
Interview with a Killer. New season coming in 2025, only on Court TV.
Erica.
All right, folks, we'll get you back to court in just a moment. But first, I want to bring in our guest for this hour. Joining us to discuss, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, Marsha Minot. Marsha, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me on the program. And, you know, it's clear, Marsha, where the defense is going. We just saw them trying to get in some text messages, which would have, or at least created the idea that maybe someone else was having some sort of relationship with the victim, maybe had some problems with the victim, and might, you know, could possibly be responsible, trying to create some reasonable doubt. But I can tell you, they've done it a few times, but it's not gaining traction for me yet. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the reason it's not gaining traction is because it's not being eloquently presented. I noticed that in making his argument, defense counsel is allowing two prosecutors to double team him in making the argument to present the evidence. That is not permitted. You should narrow it down to who's going to make the argument, judge, in rebuttal. You also have to explain to the court and make the connection as to relevance. So why you think it is critical for this type of evidence to come in. And so far, it's not making the connection because he's not making the argument.
And I think, quite frankly, under the circumstances, considering what the defense is, I was surprised that the judge wouldn't allow it in. I thought a cogent argument making the connection, I thought it was clearly relevant. The idea that perhaps there was a simultaneous or, you know, around the same time conversation going on with someone else that was perhaps sexual in nature, but also had some violence involved regarding punching people or someone being mad at someone else.
You're correct, Michael, but the defense counsel expressed to the court that the language in the document said, you're not going to pull the wool over my eyes or something to that sort. That's not the portion of the document that counsel should have been reading from. Counsel should have been pointing to the judge here. There's acts of violence being discussed between this alleged individual and the alleged victim. And judge, that's critical to show these jurors that someone else had the motive, means, and opportunity to have committed this crime.
Yeah, I would agree. Again, it just seemed like it was a surprising ruling by the judge. And here's the other thing that's becoming clear to me after today's evidence presentation by the prosecution. There are a number of questions that only this defendant can answer. And I'm wondering if, you know, I understand where the defense is going with this, trying to point the finger at possibly someone else. But there are questions that can only be answered by the defendant. And I'm not sure they're headed in the direction of putting him on the stand, but I think he needs to.
He absolutely needs to. I've stated several times, Michael, when I've been on, over the last decade, I have noticed that a defendant that does not take the stand increases the likelihood of conviction to a 90% level. That's how high I think it has gotten. Social media, along with televisions, reality shows, have changed the dynamic of the evidence that you're presenting in a courtroom. If he does not take the stand and explain why his vehicle is there, how his vehicle got there, why his vehicle left, and why he's not the individual who have committed this murder, I think he's guaranteed a conviction with what the state is putting up.
Yes, I would agree 100%. And when you talk about, you know, the analysis is risk reward, and I think you're right. I think now the risk is so much higher for not putting them on the stand that you almost have to, especially in a case like this. All right, Marsha, stand by. I do want to take folks back to testimony in the missing student murder trial of Timothy Herrington Jr. Sergeant Ben Douglas with the University of Mississippi Police Department, he's still on the stand. He's still on cross. So let's get back inside that courtroom.
You indicated during your direct examination that you did a search warrant for the infotainment of Mr. Harrington's car, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You did not get a return?
I don't believe so. The data was unusable.
You didn't get anything back on the infotainment center indicating that it had been sent to you? As a result of your search warrant?
I don't understand the question.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked, or this will be marked for identification as. So I was sent a return. Hey. Go through the car first. Did you, were you involved in taking actual possession of?
Right, looks like there might be some issues there with some of the evidence. And what's interesting about this particular case, and might be a small problem for the prosecution, is just how popular this victim was. Jimmie Lee seemed like a guy, at least according to testimony, that had a lot of friends, was very prolific on social media, enjoyed going out, and knew a lot of different people, used different apps and things of that nature. All that is fodder for the defense. So let's continue to see if he can use some of that to help with their defense. Let's get back into court.
Very good. It's not a trick question. Can you identify, read that page, can you identify that particular item? Something that y'all received.
Personally, I don't know what this is in the picture. I can't explain. It just looks like a hard, piece of technology to me. But Lynn writes what it is in the picture or in the report.
If he doesn't know what it is.
Identify the car. I'll withdraw the second page.
I know that the vehicle is Tim Harrington's vehicle. I saw that.
I move for introduction of the vehicle.
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay and to relevance. This is hearsay because although it was received via a search warrant, there's no certificate of authenticity. He's saying it's a vehicle. If you want pictures of the vehicle, redact all the language off of it. Your Honor, it's hearsay.
I don't know what's contained on the thing. That right now, all we know is that the witness has identified that vehicle. Anything else would come off anyway.
Can you identify the vehicle in the photograph?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, we do need to step aside here and take a break. When we return, Sergeant Ben Douglas wraps up his testimony on cross and then explains why detectives didn't rely on the victim's vehicle recorder data on redirect. Keep it here on Court TV Live. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. Back now to the missing student murder trial out of Mississippi. Defendant Timothy Herrington is accused of killing Ole Miss student Jay Lee after the two had met up early on a July morning in 2022. Lee's mom began to worry about her son when he hadn't called her to wish her a happy birthday, as he always had done, and his body has yet to be found. Let's get you back into court now, where Sergeant Ben Douglas is on the stand. He's finishing up his cross-examination.
See what it's on beside the vehicle anyway. And
Okay, Detective.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, it's admissible.
I don't think there's anything that hadn't been, they did a dump on it anyway.
Your Honor, can I just, I don't want to belabor the point. This is a report, an agency report.
Objection, Your Honor.
8036 allows for introduction.
Hang on 1 second. You've asked for this to be introduced in the evidence.
That's right.
I'm going to let this page be introduced into evidence.
Thank you.
All right. We'll fight the next battle when we get there. But
Yes.
I'm going to let that be introduced into evidence. And I'm sure that's not going to be the last fight. That particular page comes into evidence. The second page doesn't come into evidence.
I did.
The witness says he don't know what that is. All right, go ahead.
You indicated that this second page, first page and the second page was the report of Detective Stark, correct?
Yes.
That is a regularly kept record, business public record, a report that y'all keep within y'all's agency, correct? That he kept.
It's not my agency.
I'm laying the foundation for 803 introduction, Your Honor.
I'm going to let you ask the question.
Just trying to speed up the process. This is a report that Detective Starkey worked for y'all at this time. He did as a part that worked. It's a report for not for y'all, but for Oxford Police Department.
He didn't work for Oxford Police Department. He worked for DeSoto County, or DeSoto Police Department, I think.
He sent this report, placed in your file. That's what I meant to say. This report came to y'all.
Yes.
Became part of your investigative file.
Okay. Yes.
Right? Okay. As part of this report, became part and parcel of your entire investigative file in this particular case, right?
Yes.
All right. Move for introduction this time.
I hear your objection.
Objection, Your Honor. He skipped over the part where it's a regularly conducted business activity. It's not a regularly conducted business activity.
I'm going to deny the introduction as a regular kept business record. If every police report would be introduced into evidence, if that was the case, and I don't think we tried. I'll let you talk to the appropriate witness about it. But even if the detective whose report was there was sitting here, I would not allow the introduction of their report. I would allow you to cross-examine them on that report, but I would not allow the introduction of it.
Your Honor, 8036 clearly says once it becomes part of confrontation clause doesn't apply to a defendant. Only applies to the state.
I'm not worried. I think it's hearsay, and
I'll move on.
If every police report, because it was a police report, got introduced into evidence, we'd just let the witnesses read the police reports. Go ahead.
Thank you. All right, Detective, when you got engaged in this particular investigation, and you subpoenaed the Red Eye account, can you tell me when that Red Eye account was opened? That's what's been introduced in the evidence. Look at your report, Tim.
I would need to look at the subpoena or the return that we were given.
Is it a fair statement it was not opened up on July the 8th or July the 7th, 2022?
That the report itself was not open?
The Red Eye account was not open on that particular date.
What do you mean, created? So it was created previously, but it
was created previously.
Okay. Yeah, created. Okay.
Fair statement. Your recollection that was sometime months prior to that the Red Eye account was opened up. Is that right?
Yes, it was created and then deactivated and then reactivated.
Okay. Activated, reactivated.
Yeah, deactivated, reactivated, deactivated again, reactivated again. I don't remember how many times, but I know that it was activated and deactivated and then reactivated.
And you've done a lot of these types of subpoenas, correct?
I did a bunch of them with. I personally didn't send the subpoena. This was Detective Baker's subpoena that I was there whenever it came back. So I have not done subpoenas like this. I write search warrants. I've never issued subpoenas like this.
But my question is, you've been involved in investigations where you've seen similar activities.
All right, so remember, they established that that red eye accountant was the one that was communicating with the victim in this case, leading up to his disappearance. All right, we're going to take a break. Coming up on Court TV, Sergeant Douglas answers questions about the victim's block history and the response police got from the public when a Facebook post about Jay Lee's disappearance was published. More testimony in the missing student murder trial of Timothy Herrington Jr. straight ahead.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a jury convicted Melody Farris for the murder of her husband. Now she's facing sentencing. We're breaking down everything you may have missed from today's emotional hearing.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV. Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, tonight, 9, 8 Central, only on Court TV.
We're continuing to bring you testimony in the missing student murder trial going on in Mississippi. Ole Miss graduate Timothy Herrington is accused of killing a student, Jimmie J. Lee, back in July of 2022. On the stand now is Sergeant Ben Douglas. He's with the University of Mississippi Campus Police Department. He's going to be wrapping up his testimony now, so let's get back into court.
About having blocked a message.
It blocked an account with the username Tim Herrington.
Had he blocked anybody previously that night other than this account?
I am not certain.
Well, you indicated on direct examination that you looked at his block history.
Yes, there were a lot of people on his blocked history. It wasn't just Tim Herrington.
And it's fair statement, when you're looking at that block history, it's kind of like old school and you're hanging up on somebody, you don't want to talk to them anymore, you unblock them sometimes. You saw that his block history, he's blocking and unblocking people throughout the entire history of that account, right?
I don't know if we ever could see whenever he would unblock a person. I think we just saw the blocked accounts.
His blocked accounts, but you can't see when he unblocks.
I don't believe I ever saw like a page where it said blocked and then unblocked and then blocked and then unblocked. The page that we were talking about was it just said blocked.
Okay. But you were looking at his block history, fair statement?
Yes.
And that was not unique to just Mr. Harrington's account, right? There were other accounts, like you said, he was blocked.
Yes, there was more than one account that he had blocked.
Now, do you recall the first time that you went out to Molly Bar Apartments and engaged yourself in knocking on any doors?
I don't remember what day it was, no sir.
Did you look at your report? You got your report with you?
I didn't write a report about that, I don't believe.
Would it be consistent with somewhere around early on in the investigation, right?
It would have been early on in the investigation. It would have been around the 10th or the 11th whenever we found the car.
And did you make any report or anything like that? Or have you seen anything in your report that indicate which doors that officers went to and knocked to see who may have been home and who was residents at that? Or did you compile any summary pertaining to that?
I didn't create a summary pertaining to that.
No, you did not? You know what officer may have done that?
I know a lot of officers that did that.
But you don't know which one did it?
I'm not sure which one.
Y'all may be need prepared.
I think that's all I have.
Okay, well, I was just going to say we may be running late tonight, but we may not be anyway. Redirect.
Oh, sorry. Sergeant Douglas, I want to give you an opportunity to explain. We'll go back to the burla. They were talking about the burla. Explain what the burla download from Jay Lee's vehicle. I'll give you a full opportunity to explain what you were trying to say about why you all didn't rely upon it.
So whenever we got the return from Jay Lee's burla, we didn't believe that the information was credible because there were multiple times where it would say like, driver door opened, driver door opened, driver door opened, driver door opened, but it was never closed. And so the driver door can't be opened 16 times and never close. Because of things like that, and because we had video footage that we knew that this is when the car was still, or we knew that this was when the car was driving, and it would say that it had been put into drive or put into neutral, things like that, where there were times that didn't match up with information that we knew, and there was information inside of it that was repeating that just, if you look at it, it just doesn't make sense on its own. And so we didn't believe that the information inside of the burla reports for Jay Lee's car were credible.
And did the burla report even have a time stamp, or I guess time zone? Like what?
I remember that the digital copy did, the one that you receive that way. This one doesn't say, but I know that both of them had converted it at some point, but I'm not sure what they converted it from or what they used to convert it.
You were asked about the searches on the Facebook, Timothy Herrington searches for Jay Lee. Facebook, when did the BOLO go out? Which I believe is a be on the lookout. When did that first go out, if you remember?
I don't know about the BOLO. I know that the public service, like the public announcement on Facebook and all that kind of stuff, that went out on July 10th.
Okay. And after that came out, did several people reach out to you, to UPD and to OPD regarding to help with this investigation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Was Khalid Fears one of those people?
Yes.
Okay. And why did he reach out?
He had spoken to Jay Lee the night that he went missing.
And did Timothy Herrington reach out?
He did not.
One final question. When was the Red Eye 24 account closed?
July 8th. On July 8th is whenever the Red Eye 24 account was deactivated.
So it was deactivated on July 8th?
Yes.
No further questions, John.
All right, that came to...
Now, remember, July 8th is the day that Jimmie Lee disappeared. Again, it was the day that Red Eye and him were going back and forth. All right, let's bring in our guest still with us to discuss, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Marsha Minot. Marsha, you heard something there that I thought was an important point. It's been on my mind throughout this. I was wondering how it was going to come in. The victim in this case was headed over, and we know this. I think this is a fact that's been established. He was headed over to the defendant's apartment. When he doesn't show up, the defendant really doesn't reach out again, doesn't call to tell anyone. And on the 10th, when it's put up on Facebook that there was, be on the lookout for this person's missing, he doesn't reply at all about this person missing, or he was supposed to come and see me, didn't show up. All those things, I thought, that's very powerful piece of evidence there brought out on redirect.
It is, if it's not rebutted. Because remember, if the defense gets up and says, hey, this gentleman has no duty to say that someone who he's going to just hook up with did not show up. So if I schedule a date with someone and the person doesn't show up, do I have a duty to contact law enforcement to say, hey, they didn't show up for the date? If the jurors believe that that is not significant, then that's not such a slam dunk. But if the jurors buy it and say, hey, why wouldn't you call and say, oh, by the way, I was supposed to meet with this person, they never showed up, then of course it's going to be problematic for the defense.
Yeah, I think it is problematic at the end of the day because you have to look at it in common sense terms. And they would think that that would be something they would want to do. At the very least, there should have been some calls to the guy's phone saying, hey, where you at? You know, what's going on? I'm still waiting for you. None of that as well. You know, there was something that came out today, too, that I want to get your thoughts on. We found out, now we've been telling folks that, in fact, there was a search on the defendant's phone at the time that the victim was headed over to his place saying, how long does it take to strangle someone? But we found out today, actually, it was how long to strangle someone and then gabby petito right after it. So either he was interested in that case or not, but does that change how you look at that particular search?
It does, because if the person is searching for Gabby Petito and she has absolutely nothing to do with this murder case, then it can show that we have to be careful as individuals of searching things about stories that may be similar to something going on as it pertains to being charged for a crime. So I don't think much weight should be given to that, only because of what was searched after it. And if he might be showing interest in some public story that occurred, that it might not have a connection with this case.
Yeah, we have to find out what was sort of the context of that search as well. It seems a bit out of place that he's going about Gabby Petito at that point. So it just kind of changed my mind about that particular search. And at the very least, something the defense can hang their hat on. All right, Marcia Minot, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. You have a great evening.